Welcome back to Always Almost There, a Goose podcast series by Storm Sound and Osiris Media. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Neal. The two of us are here today to recap the first leg of spring tour, spanning from Boston to Birmingham.
We are very sad that Brian, Kev, and Danny could not be here with us for this episode due to some unfortunate scheduling conflicts, but we are very, very excited to have Brian Brinkman of HFPod joining us to lend his voice and insight to the tour recap. Brian, how are you doing?
My voice and my insight will be lent tonight. I'm very excited. I'm very thankful that you guys invited me on here. Ryan, I've been ribbing you for years, it feels like now, to bring me onto your podcast to talk about Goose. I talk about way too much fish. And as I tell our good friend RJB, I listen to fish for work. I listen to Goose for fun. I'm so excited to podcast for fun right now. Hot takes already.
I love it.
Oh, bring it.
I love it. We're full of them here. So I assume that means that this weekend you will be watching Goose over fish.
This is a huge debate in my house and amongst my friends. I will be doing Goose and then fish on each evening.
Mm-hmm.
First time ever.
My current plan is to watch Goose and then go based off of what both bands are playing to determine when I switch.
That's how I'm going to plan things out once they go out west, and I've got to actually commit to one show versus another.
Right.
I want to see what the first weekend of Fish looks like. I want to see Goose, we're going to talk about it. They're already hot. They've been on the road for basically a month now with a couple weeks off here and there. I mean, they're playing some great music. I don't want to bury the lead at this point and just like give away the entire next 4.5 hours of this podcast. But man, there's some good music we're going to be talking about.
Thank you for teasing the length of the podcast. That's how we do things around here. He's been prepped appropriately, so that's good. I don't know what I'm going to be listening to this weekend. It all depends on what Ryan breaks off and listens to. It's up in the air. So Ryan has dubbed me the person to listen to all of Goose if he breaks off and listens to Fish. So we'll figure it out.
Someone needs to do the setlist thread. That's all we know. So we'll see what happens.
There you go.
So,
all right. Shall we talk about the music?
Yes,
yeah, I mean, we've got 8 shows to talk about. So if we don't jump in now,
we've got 9
not finishing till 9 shows to talk about. Thank you for the correction. But if we don't start now, we're never going to finish. So let's begin. And I get to kick it off because this is a show that I was at. Very exciting. My wife's 3rd Goose show. So also exciting. But yes, March 23rd at the Roadrunner in Boston, which is a venue I've been hoping that Goose is going to play at for a really, really long time. It felt like they were ready to play at this venue when it opened. A lot of bands like in Goose's, wheelhouse of venues had already played there. We had Trey there, I think, right when they opened. Billy, the day they opened. So we were all wondering when Goose was going to play there. And sure enough, we finally get them at this venue right at the moment that Goose outgrew the venue. It's great. So I will talk about this as I go. But set 1 at this show, Flow Down, Turbulence, Elizabeth. All 3 I missed at least most of, because Roadrunner was not ready for Goose. And the line to get in was just about a half mile long. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this.
I don't even know how long that is.
Let
me convert
it's like really a kilometer or so. I don't know, give or take. But so we get Flow Down, Turbulence, Elizabeth. And then Elizabeth was actually right when I was getting settled into the venue. Actually a pretty tasty jam in this Elizabeth. And then we get an incredible rarity at this point with Travelers, which, was really, really exciting for folks who hadn't heard it in a while. I don't think I'd heard it in a while. Mm-hmm. And then we get a Father John Misty cover writing a novel. And then Earthling or Alien, the first example of, I think, what we get one of every single show on this tour, which was Goose laying a jam out there and just letting it happen. Mm-hmm. And this is the first of it. And I think we get one every single night on this tour. And I think I'll bring it up every show that we talk about. But this one was there. The patience was there. And we've talked about this a bunch on the day after shows. I think that patience was frustrating to some people. We talked about this a little bit, where some folks were impatient with that patience.
Mhm.
Some jams came better than others, but this is a good example of them kind of letting the jam come to them. But I want to hear what you guys have to say about this set before I kind of really dig in deeper on this Earthling or Alien.
Can I just offer some thoughts at the top about patience?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, let's do it.
Hit
Because if we're going
us.
to talk about this run, we got to talk about patience.
Yeah.
It's an interesting discussion point and discourse within the community. Part of the reason I find it fascinating is I have a very, very close friend who will go unnamed, even though he will probably not listen to this podcast for reasons I'm about to explain. One of my favorite fish friends, like the type of person, you guys know what this is like, where you can just throw out a random oddity comment from one of the band members and he knows exactly what show, exactly what set, exactly what song came before or after. The type of person that like I can stay up all night and we can just one after another play a surprise me jam, and it's like the kind of jam that you just were not expecting and it just blows your brains. He has not gotten Goose yet, and his whole reason for not getting Goose is he does not believe that they're patient enough. And so I'm caught between these two areas of fan discourse where I'm hearing from the Goose side of things that they are becoming too patient and it's too slow and it's taking too long to get somewhere. And then I hear from the other side, on the fish side of things, it's moving too quickly. It's not patient enough yet. They aren't taking enough time to develop ideas. They're not taking enough time to let things grow properly. They're just going right for the peak. Personally, I think that Goose has always existed somewhere in between. I think that there's been a ton of excitement because they can peak and because that's a really difficult thing to do really well. We all listen to a lot of jam bands that don't do it very well, but they do it often. I feel like Goose has always done a really good job of kind of like building up to that peak, but they've always really liked that peak. And now I'm hearing this band cool off from that and allow for diversions and new ideas. Personally, could they get more patient? Sure. I think that like if it were me deciding what I'd love to hear from them, it'd be more of like the weirdness that we heard at the end of like that Rosewood that we're going to talk about in Nashville. But I'm curious your guys' thoughts about like the patient discourse and the patient discussion point.
So I was so happy as this Earthling was unfolding. We saw kind of tastes of this kind of patient jamming at the Cap, stuff like the first jam of that drive, where they just like they didn't rush the theme, they just let it happen, as you said before, Neal. And so this Earthling, as it started to open up, like obviously the finest example I think of the long form patience that we heard on this tour will come at the next show, but this Earthling was a big step forward, and it was like, okay, there's like they're making a conscious effort to let the music breathe on its own, to see where it takes them instead of, one of us is going to drive it dark. One of us is going to drive it into this funky direction. One of us is going to drive it into this, hard charging peak. They sat back, they kind of hung out in the groove and waited for an idea to come to them. So I think this is really important, like throughout every band, every significant jam band, you have a kind of point where they take these really long excursions to try to develop their sound. The Dead, even, you had these really, really long jazzy excursions in the early 70s where they're just kind of fucking around with different themes and, things. And Fish, obviously, 94, 95, you have these 30 to 50-minute jams that are just like, they're just pushing the envelope. Like, I don't like those jams very much because I don't find a ton of them. Okay, yeah, you're both gonna laugh at me, whatever. This is not a Fish podcast. I'm not on here to get crucified for my Fish takes. There are other podcasts for that. But this is a really important step for the band, being able to do that, because they have existed for so long in this world of being known as the band with the peaks and the band with the 4 on the floor grooves and whatever. So to be able to go outside of that box and just let the music expand was very exciting for me. And so throughout this Earthling, that initial funky jam that they get into, and the kind of more blissy jam in the second half, that's another theme that we see so much on this tour. I feel like we have gotten so used to chasing the weird that I feel like some people, myself especially, have kind of put less stock into really good Bliss jams. And so I keep having to remind myself as I'm listening to the jams from this tour, like, just because it's not like super dissonant and weird and dark doesn't mean it's not amazing. So the Bliss jams on this tour have been absolutely incredible. And we'll get to that. But that's my kind of initial, very long-winded take on the Patience and this Earthling.
So I'll say this about the Patience. I think with the Patience, what you're seeing is a lot of listening going on. And
Absolutely.
I think that is where the good stuff happens, right? And I think actually in this show, you get an example of like a very long drawn out like opportunity to listen to each other, waiting for those ideas to materialize, somebody grabbing them and doing something with them. I don't know if they actually crush it in this show at all, but there's a much shorter version of some really excellent listening a little bit later in the second set, which we'll talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So shall we talk about the second set, or do we want to dig in a little bit on this Earthling a little bit more? Or do we want to talk about Elizabeth at all, or
Elizabeth? I will put out the Chugel word again.
All right, yeah. So I was waiting for that.
That's kind of the only adjective you can use to describe a 11 to 13 minute Elizabeth jam. Just solid Chugel.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was a solid first set. I think ultimately a lot of the song selections represented an opening night of tour. Flowdown is a very easy groove for the band to get into. They clearly have a ton of fun doing it. The Hey Jude stuff and it was great. Turbulence, Ryan, you and I have talked about it. I'm sure you guys have talked about it. It's one of those, it's an accomplishment for Goose to have a song like Turbulence. It's one of those songs that doesn't need a jam. It's just 5 to 8 minutes long, has a really solid peak. They need, some more of those, like to just flesh out aspects of their set list. And I love hearing it. It's got such a great earworm riff. Elizabeth, as you guys said, Travelers being a slight bust out there, a little rarity at this point in time. I think I heard
31 shows.
31 shows. Yeah. I think I heard that at my third or fourth Goose show. And it just it's always stuck with me. It's just really good lyrically. I love like the melodic space they fall into. Huge Father John Misty fan. So anytime they play Writing a Novel, one of my best friends was at this show and he was freaking out when they played that. It was the first time he got it live. And then the Earthling, I think it's pretty high up for me. I think I have it like 12th overall this year so far, just in terms of my jam rankings. Really, really solid. The Patience that we talked about, I'm on board with it. This is what I'm listening for with Goose is what you guys are talking about, is all the band members hearing each other, hearing the conversation that the other guys are doing. Not to make this a Fish comparison, but you bring up those 94, 95 crazy jams. The thing that made those jams so important for Fish was it forced them to listen to each other in a manner that was challenging, was risk-taking. I don't think that it was ever the musical stopping point of where they wanted to be as a band. It was more of an exercise in a live concert. This Earthling kind of felt that way. The one difference is it's got such a melodic peak at the end. It almost reminds me of the Carini from Hampton 2013. It's just like candy grooves from Goose, and what a way to end the first set, and what a way to turn a song like Earthling or Alien into a huge jam vehicle. These last 5-6 versions that we've heard have just been stunning.
Yep. And you hammer a point that I've really hit on quite a bit, which is Earthling or Alien is now a jam vehicle. There's an expectation there when Earthling or Alien is played. On it, Pat. Yeah, and when this song was introduced, that it was not that, and much maligned for not being that, right? There was the conduction aspect of it. It was the party song, and then now all of a sudden it's something completely different. And every time they play it, you get something really, really good. So when they played it at the Cap, I still think that there's a section of improv in that version from Capitol Theater that is one of my favorite pieces of improv they've done yet in 2023. Same. It just sounds so unique and so good.
It's so good.
But before I turn the page on this set, I do want to say that the Father John Misty cover that they do, they execute it so well. And I've said this time and time again, but this is what Goose does. They show up and play covers that honor the original artist. And I think that's something as jam band fans we're not necessarily used to.
Yeah.
So sometimes you get a cover where it's just oh, this song, I love it and it's great. But this song, vocally, it approaches what Father John Misty would do in a live show. And like, people pay a lot of money just to show up and hear Father John Misty sing that song and nothing else. No jams, none of that. Just, doing the song.
This was also the first novel since Radio City, and I want to highlight how good that version with Father John Misty is, because obviously the Trey sit-in rightfully gets all the hype from that show, but go back and listen to the novel with Father John Misty if you haven't in a while. The harmonies with Rick are just incredible.
It's good stuff.
Yes. Set 2.
All right. Set 2. We get Creatures, Hunger Sight, Redbird, Please Forgive Me, all without a pause. And then Bob Don and Pancakes to close off the set with a slow ready encore. And so I was at this show, and this is a really awesome set in terms of threading a set together. I don't know if this is a set that I'm going to go back and listen to, a million times over, but like the one piece of music that really stood out for me in this set was the Redbird. And this Redbird is very, very good, and it's not very long. You get about 15 minutes of music. You get about 6.5, 7 minutes of a jam section in this, but the jam section that is in this Redbird is incredible. And there are people that we talk to who think that this is indicative of a jamming style that is like coming around the corner. I agree with that. They get to a lot of places really fast. We talked about Fish a little bit already, and this is kind of maybe one of the fishiest things they've done, is they found a space so fast in this jam that's so good, and then they just walked away from it. They could have really, really kind of dragged this whole thing out, but they chose not to. They chose to move on and kind of march ahead with their set, which is kind of atypical of Goose, right? Like we normally would get like a 20, 25-minute version of Redbird, really hammering on the themes that they found right off the bat in this one. So not a patient listening to each other jam, but still incredible spaces they found here.
And a really nice juxtaposition against the Earthling from the first set. That was longer, patient, more upbeat. This Redbird hits on some darker themes and is, 10 minutes shorter. And so, yeah, it's a great one. And I do also want to highlight how Hunger Sight has hit this level of absolute fire right now on this tour. Like the last few versions, that first jam section, they've just been absolutely obliterating, like just Rick like flamethrower on the crowd. So hell yeah. And Bob Don is an amazing second set landing pad, and it has been proving that.
Bob Don, just to start there, now that it's slowed down, it really sounds like Goose has written like a My Morning Jacket cover. Like it just sounds like something that could have come off of Z, or like the second half of It Still Moves. It's just got that like late night kind of seedy groove to it, and it's got a really good melodic chorus, and like I don't know, it sounds to me like something that they would have written in like the early 2000s. I agree with you guys. I think this set flowed really well. I haven't gone back to listen to this set on like a repeated basis the way that I have other sets later in this overall run here, but I'm right with you, Neal. The Redbird blew me away. It's on my overall list of top jams of the year, and it does this thing that you said it really well. It's very fishy in the sense that it connects on an idea, it connects on a groove, and then it just builds off of that. And it's kind of hypnotic. And it's really strange to me that Redbird in its best versions, and I think, obviously the Pittsburgh one from last year, at its best, Redbird moves from being this very touching ballad into a hypnotic dance groove type of jam. And it's such a strange juxtaposition for a song like this. Like you would think that oftentimes a band puts out a song like a Redbird and they just are like, okay, we're just not going to touch that from a jamming standpoint. Like there are Fish songs that the band is just never going to touch from a jamming standpoint because it just means a lot emotionally. It brings up a lot of feelings in the crowd, and it's almost seen as like a break. Redbird totally could have been, and some might argue it should have been, that type of song. But instead, the band has turned Redbird into one of their most consistent jam vehicles. This C is the same sort of way. Like the fact that this band is able to take a song like Redbird that could just be 5 minutes, cool down, contemplative, go grab another beer, go to the bathroom, just like sit down and chill out, but turned into this brilliant jamming vehicle. And we're going to have a even stronger version later on here in this tour. It's something that I'm in awe of with this band over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the Redbird that comes later, very different Redbird. The next
Very
Redbird they
different.
play, like, might as well be an entirely different song. So
Yeah.
it's fascinating. Other note that I want to make about this set. So again, my wife's third Goose show, so it's very exciting for us. When they played Bob Don, they finished Bob Don after the soaring guitar solo from Rick that just absolutely shreds. She was like, "That was my favorite part of the night," and I was like, "I knew I married you for a reason." There are many things that you can pick from that night, but that Bob Don guitar solo that hits so well every time and hit extra well at this show, killer. And then of course, Slow Ready Encore. Who doesn't love a Slow Ready Encore?
And
So good.
a pretty great pancakes. There have been some this year so far. We've been treated to a few shorter, not as adventurous, but to the point, very amazing set or show closing versions of pancakes. So shout out to those. Shall we move on to Philly?
Shall we? Let's do it.
So March 24th at the Met in Philadelphia. Neal and I were both at this show. First set starts off. We move through Rockdale, Atlas Dogs, Love is a Battlefield, Everything Must Go, The Old Man's Boat, and Thatch. Rockdale has made kind of a resurgence this year, kind of this tour. The last few plays, it's they're kind of getting into this thing where they'll go into like a double time groove into the jam and take it out longer. This Rockdale doesn't go a ton of places, but it's longer and it's more of that. They're just kind of pushing, seeing where the song is going to go. And obviously they will jam out of Rockdale with much more successful results, in my opinion, a bit later in the tour, which I feel like we keep saying. But Atlas Dogs continues to be a really great first set tune. Brian and I, we've talked about this a lot, how Goose does not have as many like just 5-minute rocker songs, basically. Like they need that though. Not every song can be, 8 minutes minimum. Sometimes they need a 4 to 5 minute song. So Atlas Dogs has really kind of found its place there. I'm sure we will see the jam come back at some point in the future, but it works really, really well on its own. I think, something we'll talk about later in the show. We'll talk about Animal. I feel like should be about 10 minutes shorter every time it's played. But this was a great set too. First, Love is Battlefield since last summer. Everything Must Go is such a good song. Oh my God. It's so good. Like the guitar solo, Rick is just going for it. Lots of sustain happening. Boat's always fun. And then, Thatch fucks. I'm going to save the Thatch discourse for, a couple Thatches from now. But this was a fun set.
I had fun. I think ultimately my big highlight of this set was the Rockdale. I thought more than anything, it just felt like a statement. Philadelphia. This is their first time in Philadelphia. Correct me if I'm wrong. Since the tour finale last year.
Yes.
So kind of a big moment, big return. They're leveling up, going from the Fillmore to the Met. We're early on in the tour, whereas that was the tour finale. To walk out and play a 22-minute version of one of their strongest songs, like pure songs, but a song that also is an incredible jam vehicle, I thought just kind of sent a message about where the band is at right now, sent a message about what their intentions were on this tour and what their intentions were in this run. The rest of set one I enjoyed. I'm right there with you. I love Atlas Dogs. Love is a Battlefield's a great cover. Everything Must Go. The first time I heard this live was Goosemas. I did not love it as the second slot in the first set of the first show, but I think when it's placed right, it just is like a beautiful kind of that faux ballad / rager that the band can, that like zone that the band can hang out in. But yeah, Rockdale, this was not my favorite Rockdale of the year, but just like the fact that they came out and played The fact that Goose can play a 22-minute song to open a show and it's not really surprising is a thing I love about where they're at right now, and a thing I love about the band. But the fact that they did it to open up this run just felt it felt symbolic in some ways. So I really dug that. And for me, after that, the rest of the set could kind of just been anything, or it would have been cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we were at the show at set break, if you look at the rest of the set that follows the Rockdale, we were like, okay, so tonight the only thing we're gonna get is Rockdale. Like it felt like, in terms of jams, when you look at the way the rest of this set unfolded, it was weird. And actually, you see this again on this tour, where they kind of show up in the first set and do a real like first set, if we can call that an adjective.
Which is not like out of the ordinary for bands in general. It's just Goose is a band that has never really done a 9 or 10 song first set. So it's weird to see from them.
And they typically will go hard in the first set too. And they didn't go hard in this set. And that Rockdale was really, really good. I really enjoyed that. Everything Must Go was probably the best Everything They Must Go to date. It was slightly extended, which is good. Old Man's Boat, thankfully, came early in this run, so I could do my bathroom review of a show.
The Met bathrooms were great.
The Met bathrooms much better than the Cat bathrooms.
Yeah.
We touched on this in the day after.
We did. There's a good discussion about this.
But no, it's important. There's a thing that you have to do, and like I feel like I have to bring this up, that when you're at a Goose show, there is a game that must be played, which is when Old Man's Boat starts, you need to go to the bathroom and return, maybe even get a beer if like the venue's right, and return before the jam section. And so I did that in this Old Man's Boat. That's a race, and it's all a game, and it needs to be done. It needs to be executed well. I think I did that during this Old Man's Boat. Or wait, maybe I didn't. Maybe I had to wait because I couldn't get out. I can't remember now. It's all like blending together. But then again,
it's a fun game to play.
Met Theater Bathroom's pretty good. Better than the Cat. I think that's the upshot there. And then, of course, Thatch Bucks. There's no like deep analysis we're ever going to do on Thatch, other than like.
I mean, I'm going to talk about the Ryman one in greater detail than this one, but
well, of course, I think there's like a lot more to talk about there. But this one killed it. When they finished it, there were high fives going around. There were hugs. There was excitement about like this being the best Thatch they played, and then of course, the best Thatch they played only lasted for how many days?
4 days, yeah.
4 days.
It was the best. Every Thatch is the best Thatch since the last Thatch until the next Thatch.
Well, right, but it's like a really exciting time when you're going to see a band and you can say things like that, right? And I think people find that kind of discourse exhausting or annoying, especially when they're not following closely. And
those
like
people aren't listening to this podcast.
Well, maybe I don't blame them, but it's true, and this is a good example of that. Where, I mean, they went out there, destroyed this amazing new song, and then showed up a few days later and destroyed it even more.
And then showed up a few days after that and destroyed it even more.
Yeah,
we're lucky to be at a point where there's a band that's unveiling songs like Thatch, in addition to everything that was unveiled in early 2022.
In addition to the stuff that's been unveiled already this year, which we're going to talk about one of them in a second. Like all these new songs are just clicking immediately, which is so cool.
Well, and that every version, as you're saying, Neal, like it one-ups itself. It's like the band hears something in that version, but they don't want to, because Thatch kind of needs that power. Like still, I would be really curious to hear them open us. Well, I guess they opened Goosemas night 2 with it, but that was they were like picking songs out of a bag. So like, I think there was a little more right. So I think there was a little more structure to it, but like, it'd be interesting to hear them open up a set with Thatch and just kind of let it go, because it has a natural jam area. They've uncovered that. I think of Thatch as like a good version of Fuego, and that's where my head's at with this song. It fucking rocks. It's got this prog element to it, and it's just like it actually rocks. I love it.
That's not the first Fish comparison that would come to. I don't know what Fish comparison, if any, but Fuego is not at the top of the list.
Just that rockin' like weird time signature aspect to it. I love it.
Just that one specific section of Fuego. You mean you're talking?
Just that one.
Okay, that makes more sense. Second set here, we've got Animal, Feel It Now, Echo of a Rose, Turned Clouds, and a Mr. Action encore. I love Animal as a song still. I personally think Animal is best suited as a 5-minute iteration, something like we saw at Red Rocks or Radio City last year. They are enjoying, though, using it as one of these patient jam vehicles. The only difference is it's just kind of hanging out in the Animal groove for 15 minutes, which I feel like the time may be better served elsewhere. But it's fun. It's a solid groove. Dance to it. Let them explore the space. Feel It Now is one of those debuts that we talked about. That this one immediately got a reaction from the crowd. Second time played ever. People were in it immediately. Like this one clicked at the Cap. This one clicked again at the Met. Obviously, I wasn't in attendance for the one at the Ryman, but I'm sure it clicked just as well. This song is great. It's kind of settled into this role as like a 10-minute, and I say settled into this role as it's only been played 3 times, but it's settled into this role as a 10-minute kind of second set dance party. Is kind of a bridge between, the opener and a big jam or another jam and another song, but it works really well in this placement. And then, of course, we get the patient jam of this tour, this Echo, which, wow. I kind of, at the show, I was kind of in awe of how long it felt and how I was like, oh my God, this is still going on. Like what? But yeah, this was amazing. That kind of dark drive to the peak they get into at the end. Peter tapping his guitar to create like weird sounds as they're going to the peak. Also notable is Peter did not play a single song on his guitar this entire show. Did not touch it except for in this jam. And I played Neal's bathroom game at the beginning of Turn Clouds. As soon as I heard the first notes, I was out of there and back before Peter's organ solo, which was great, much needed after that Echo jam. And Mr. Action was a surprisingly great pick for the encore. I quite enjoyed it.
So I want to address Turn Clouds first.
Okay.
There are other people who see a lot of Goose shows.
Yeah.
Mike Dubois, who is kind of like an OG fan. I ran into him at the bathroom at Indianapolis last year, and a bunch of people. And I was informed that as long as we're going to do fish comparisons, that Turn Clouds was Goose's possum. Insofar as not musically.
These parallels are weird.
But the song that you absolutely rushed to the bathroom during, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with, but there's a large contingent of people who see like a whole ton of Goose shows who are like, this is the song. This is this song. When I hear it, I'm running to the bathroom. But I mean, there's a lot to love about this set. Feel It Now is just exciting. And again, it's exciting that we have this opportunity to see a band that is going out there and playing their best music. Or putting out their best songs right now. Like, I don't know if Feel It Now is like their best song, but it's one of their best songs. And I think the fans really enjoy it. I enjoy it. Animal is Animal. And I think it's one of those songs when you start to go see a band a lot, it might wear on you. But that song hits and the crowd does feel it. And I think the energy that brings to the audience at any show is good. And so I'm excited anytime they play Animal. I think it's like it's a shot of espresso into the whole audience and gets everybody moving. So I love those two back to back. You have Animal first and then Feel It Now. I feel like that was an amazing pairing to start off a set. And then, of course, you get this Echo of a Rose, which
unload.
Yeah, and like this jam is really, really exciting. This is another example of like the patience. But this is the patience working really well. And the best it has worked yet on this tour is one of my favorite jams that they played the whole entire tour. And it lacks gimmicks. There's not like a whole section where they come down to nothing and then kind of pull a jam out of a hat, which Goose will do. Like they will kind of pull a jam that you've heard before out of a hat that happened at the Ryman and the jam that people are really, really high on, which we'll talk about later. But that didn't happen here. This all starts with an idea. And they follow that idea for an incredibly long time. and the peak that results from this, or the peaks that result from this, are incredible. They're masterful. It's wonderful. Everything about this jam I love, and this is what I love about improvisational music. You can get to a place from just a simple idea. There's no trickery or stopping and like trying a new idea, just like stretching out an idea that was really, really good and just taking a riff and running with it. Same thing happens with Ryman Redbird, I think, later, where you just take this riff and run with it. This goes on longer than that. And holy crap, did I have a fun time during this jam. I was in the audience. I was with Vickers, the famous Vickers. And I don't think anybody in the venue had more fun than him during this. I mean, it was nuts.
It's true. I could see you guys during this jam. You guys were you were both very happy. I've talked on the pod before about Neal's during a show smile and how it's very wholesome. But yeah, the two of them together was quite the.
I mean, that was like beyond smile. It was like, jumping and like fist pumping, and I mean, because it had like everything you want to hear in a jam. I mean, it was so good. One of my favorite jams of the year. I'm not going to assign a number to it. I think I'm going to retire from that for a while, but it's up there in the top 2, in my opinion, and not attendance wise. Like I think I just love the way this jam works and the ideas behind this jam. So, just killer.
Yeah, I think you said everything about the Echo. I'm on the exact same page with you. I think the only thing I'll add is like, you talk about like the magic of improvisational music with a song like this. Like the way that this jam unfolds almost makes me think of like, you're in a high school band and you may not be very good, but like you all find a groove and you may not be able to hold that groove very well, but you're just kind of like, let's never stop playing this because whatever we're playing right now is the greatest thing we will ever come up with. And the Echo is like that, but like for a very, 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 very talented professional band that is like taking lots of people's money deservedly to play rock concerts because they do this really well. Like there's nothing complex about this Echo. It's just, here's a groove, here's a theme, let's never stop playing this. And like this jam could have honestly gone on for 60 minutes and I would have never have complained. I know Ryan would have complained because he doesn't like long jams that don't have a destination to them. I know, I'm just giving you shit. All right. I get to come onto your show and give you shit, okay? But
That's
like, this is
I
what
come
we
onto
do.
your show and give you shit sometimes.
Exactly. It's mutual affection. The one thing I will say about the Echo that like strikes me every time I listen back to it, I don't know the timestamp, but it's around like 21 minutes. Trevor just goes fucking nuts, and he just starts like, it's a slap, but it's like it's like Mike Gordon in 1994, where like when he got excited, he just started like hitting notes and emphasizing notes. We're going to talk about it a lot as this tour unfolds. Trevor is my like breakout star, like breakout performer of the entire tour. I've always loved what he's done, but I've always felt like he's been too low in the mix, or he hasn't like stepped up in the way that like a jam is happening, everyone's connecting, and then now you hear Trevor's addition to it. You hear it so much throughout this entire tour, and especially this Echo. He just gets so loud, the jam gets so intense behind him, and it adds something to the last 4 or 5 minutes of it. I have this Echo as my 4th favorite jam of the year right now. I'm so into this jam. Feel It Now, just from a song standpoint, I'll just say one of the things that first attracted me to Goose was their affection for indie rock music. The cover that they play of Inside Out by Spoon was the first song that made me be like, I need to go back and listen to this band. I need to understand what's going on here. There's no reason a jam band should be covering Spoon, and yet Goose is covering Spoon, and I absolutely love it. And Feel It Now, it's not a Spoon song, but it's in like a 2010s indie rock vibe. I'm very into it.
I want to hear from the world's #1 Spoon fan over here. Neal, do you agree with the comparison?
What of Goose to Spoon?
Well, you're the world's #1 Spoon fan. Like,
well, just to be clear, I'm not comparing Feel It. I'm just saying Feel It Now has got like a very vibey indie rock feel. But I didn't know that you were a huge Spoon fan. Like that They Want My Soul. That was my #2 record of 2014. I absolutely love it.
So this is a running joke behind the scenes,
Okay.
which like I am a huge indie rock fan. I took almost 10 years off of jam band music,
Same.
starting with Fish 2.0. and then returning in 2009.
Different. Okay.
And these guys like to tease me because I say Spoon I appreciate, and I think Spoon is a great band, but Spoon is like not up there on my Mount Rushmore of indie rock bands. So what they like to say is that like I love Spoon for some reason or another. It's become a thing. But I will say this: as long as we're on the topic of Inside Out, it's far and away one of Goose's best covers, and I think that's why I started getting that teasing. In terms of like grabbing
I agree.
just a random indie rock song and just absolutely crushing it, and that's hard to do, right? Like Spoon, I think, is one of those bands that like indie or jam bands should suck at playing. They should be terrible at it.
Right.
They should be absolutely fucking awful.
Well, it's like they shouldn't,
And,
they
like-
shouldn't be able to cover Father John Misty or like Bon Iver. Or,
right.
like,
Well, I think they go out of their way to do that. They find those songs to say like, hey, like this is not who we are necessarily. Like these are the kinds of songs we're capable of doing. And I don't think honestly, I don't think there are really any jam bands out there capable of doing that right now. And I think you find that in their sound, right? To circle back to Brian's point, that like when you listen to a song like Feel It Now or Lead Up, for example, you're hearing this indie rock influence, which is amazing for somebody like me who absolutely loves indie rock music. Like it almost like doesn't seem real. It seems like this was like manifested by me sometime in like 2007, where I was like, man, I wish there was a jam band that like also was like into this music that I absolutely love. And here we are.
We should talk elsewhere about this because I have a podcast just about this. Let's talk about this. This is this is a good thing. I love it. But I'm right there with you and Feel It Now, man. I'm very into it.
Let's hit Philly Night 2. Not the Philly Night 2, a different Philly Night 2.
Yeah, so when we talk about Philly Night 2s, this is number 2 of Philly Night 2s. But that's okay. That's absolutely okay. So March 25th at the Met once again in Philadelphia, we have set 1, Dr. Darkness, Yeti, an incredibly extended Born that goes into a cover of the band's W.S. Walcott Medicine Show, Butter Rum, and then Seekers 1 and 2. And I think when I talk about this set, I think there's one notable piece that we should really dig in on, which is this Born.
Walcott, yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, hilarious. But like, yeah, this Born Walcott section is really, really good. And I don't know, this Born is polarizing because there are people who hear this piece of music and they say, this is one of the better jams they've done on this tour. I think there are other people who hear this piece of music, and I include myself in that crowd, of saying like, this is an example of, again, the listening, the patience that we've talked about that didn't exactly work out. But as a fan, I am okay with this. So we get, how many minutes is this, Ryan? This is like 25-ish?
29.
29. Okay, so
28, 29.
29 minutes of Born. And then, of course, like, I'm going to brush past the fact that this is the new arrangement of Born. We might have hammered that to death already, but
I think we have.
Yeah. So, but like talking about this jam, I mean, they were listening, they were waiting for something to come to them, and then nothing ever came. And I think that's okay. When you look at this over the course of a tour, I think if you're at that show, maybe you're disappointed. You're like, well, shit, like, something cool should have happened there, and it didn't. And I was at that show. Yeah, I mean, I can say this about that jam. It's exciting that they're at least going out there and trying to let this happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I have to say about that Born.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of the two camps on this Born. I really, really like the contemplative and calm space that they get into for a really long time in this Born, because like it's not super high up on my playlist right now, but because of the fact that they can restrain themselves for that long. Because they've shown in the past that they have a tendency, and still sometimes on this tour, where they just kind of like bail on a jam and be like, all right, peak, like, or like build back into the song. So this is really cool because it's like 15 minutes of just like calm space, like Peter's laying down textures on different keyboards. Like So this is very important for their development of their improvisation. So this may not rank very highly, now or at year's end, but it's going to be a jam that years from now we look back on as like, this is an important jam for their development, I think. And I think it's very funny how Rick tried to do the segue into Walcott at around like 22 minutes in, and the rest of the band was kind of like, we're not ready yet. And so they kept going. Neal, you were next to me when they like did that, and I was ready to tweet for the set list and be like, they're playing Walcott. And then they kept jamming. But I was very excited to get my first Walcott at this show. Bring back the Walcott jam, please. We haven't seen that in just over a year. That's a song that has been jammed very well, and I believe should be jammed again. Solid Rum. And then I played the bathroom game again with Seekers. You go to the bathroom at the beginning of part 1. You're back for part 2. It's perfect. And
even this spot is Goose bathroom games. Yeah. Yep.
This is it. I normally wouldn't go during Turn Clouds. I needed it after the Echo. But this Seekers, we've talked about on the pod a lot. Late first set is prime Seekers placement. So I was very happy to see this here. Yeah, that's my first set.
Yeah, so in the moment, I loved this Born. I was on the couch texting with a couple of buddies. We were freaking out about just how patient it was, and the fact that it was the third song of the show just felt really, it felt important in the moment. I think as I've listened back to it probably 2 or 3 times since this show, I'm right there with you guys. It has dropped down a little bit on my overall list, mainly because they don't really find a resolution there. And whereas like the Echo is kind of a sustained single, idea theme, the Echo has a lot more re-listen value, whereas the Born feels kind of like a jamming exercise. I'm right there with you though, that like I want them to do more of this. I have the patience and I have the desire to hear this band work things out in real time. So while this I don't think it'll probably end up on my larger playlist at the end of this year, because I think it's really important. I don't think like I'm going to go back to it with like a strong desire every couple of weeks and be like, I got to hear that Born again. Although I love the reworked version. You talk about indie rock. That is a war on drugs song, and I'm so here for it. I'm so here for this. The other thing I'll just say about that segment is I loved the way they came back to the theme of Walcott, went into it. It's not a full Walcott. It feels almost kind of like, let's just throw this like a couple verses out. It's faithful to the cover. It's just, it feels like, it felt a part of Born in a sense where it felt like a true segue, and it felt like we don't need to fully play this song. We just need to give you guys the idea. Butter Rum felt like an extension of that. Everything now since the Cap Butter Rum, it feels like a song that's kind of building on itself. So really dug that. And I'm right there with you. Seekers is a really good late set 1 kind of moody piece. But yeah, this was, I think more than anything, this first set was just kind of a sign of like the band is going to be pushing this tour. And that to me, more than anything, is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's the important takeaway from the set. And, this whole tour, really, I think this Born is actually emblematic of the whole tour, right? Like they're going to give it a shot. They're going to mix up songs, right? You're going to get different arrangements of songs, maybe. And then they're going to let it happen. And they're going to be patient enough. I've said this before, and I don't think I've ever said it on the pod, but I've said it behind the scenes. Like Goose does have crutches. Like when things do go wrong, or things like aren't getting anywhere good, you get a couple things that happen. But it usually starts with Rick, where Rick will just kind of like open, like not playing like any notes at all.
Yeah,
just like open guitar. And then like you go like into a peak. And he didn't do that in this. Like he didn't say like, like, fuck it, I'm done with this. Like I'm gonna do that thing and like bring us to a peak. So I mean that's cool. That's exciting. So they're playing without a net to some degree, and that is something to really be excited about. All right, so set 2, and there's some tasty stuff in this set. And this set is not, I don't know.
It's an
not like
interesting set.
It's an interesting set. So what you get is SOS, which like Thatch fucks every time, right? Absolutely killer. And then you get Lead Up, which is
Fucks every time.
Fucks every time. It's my favorite of the new originals. And I think this one, when it actually goes into a studio and goes through kind of a producer, is going to be a very different song when you hear it come out the other side of that. When it kind of gets worked with somebody who's outside of the band, who's trying to make this into, something in terms of like I don't know, a recorded piece of music, which I think is different than what you get like when a band lets songs like this kind of, develop on stage. And then you get So Ready, again, not a jammer, but a song that absolutely fires up the crowd. And then you get a Rosewood Heart into Dripfield. And then, of course, the Love Light Encore, which is, the Love Light Encore. But, I mean, there's so much cool stuff in this set. Right? There's a lot to really love about this set. I think if you're the kind of person who hangs their hat on jams, like you're walking away from the show, like saying like, oh, well, I wish there was more. But man, like SOS is just, like I said, it fucks every time. And then like Lead Up and then So Ready. And then you get a Rosewood in the show, and it's a good Rosewood. And you finish it off with Dripfield to close a set. It's a killer set.
Great drip as well. But this SOS was, for the two of us, Vickers and RJ, this was like the hardest we danced all weekend, I think. And we were all like kind of out of energy after the SOS peak, like at like the same time. Like we were all, just like going absolutely nuts. And then we all needed a breather. Which I think was really funny. We all kind of recognized that it was like, okay, that like we're not capturing that kind of energy again tonight. But this was fun. Love Lead Up so much. I was a little bit dismayed with the So Ready call in the moment. On paper, this is not really what you want to see happening in a set 2. But as you said, Neal, fires up the crowd, great for energy, and they had a great fourth quarter with this Rosewood into Dripfield. Brian, I know you really love this segment.
Yeah, I love the way this set ends. I'm not a huge fan of the way that the set starts. I think it's just set listing wise, it felt a little clunky to me. I'm on the same page with you guys. I think Lead Up, like the chorus is just, it's a hook, man. It's a freaking earworm, and it sounds like they're writing like an 80s ballad that is going to be, number 3 song on the Billboard charts for like 6 weeks in a row and have an amazing MTV music video. Like it just, I'm into it. I was right there with you. The So Ready call kind of perplexed me. I was on the couch texting with a couple buddies.
I was ready for a Monavon personally.
Yeah, I felt like we were at a point where like we needed something really big, and it's an interesting thing about Goose, and it's an interesting thing about where they're at in their career right now. Who knows what they're going to evolve to 3, 4, 5 years from now? But at this point in their career, we can rely on extended jams mixed around whatever else that they play. So even if they play a couple songs that they want to play that may not connect with you in that moment, that you're probably going to get a jam right around the corner. And for someone like myself who loves the jams, you're going to get a jam right around the corner. Dripfield, top 5 Goose song for me. I will fully admit in the moment, I was like, Dripfield never really jams. It's had some really great moments. 10-1 is my favorite Dripfield to date. 310 last year was a really good version. This version takes a left turn at about 10 minutes and 40 seconds, and the rest of the jam just blows my mind. I absolutely love it. Mr. Ryan Storm here told me I had it ranked way too high in the days and weeks after this. I have since re-listened, and you were correct. It's still in my top 10 of the year, though. I think more than anything, Dripfield is such an accomplishment songwriting wise and such an accomplishment instrumental wise. I'm sure you guys have talked at length about this, so I won't bore your listeners with it. I will just say that, like, what a showcase for the drumming segment of this band. And that song itself could just be that song every single time when they're playing it live. The fact that they figured out a way out of the Dripfield theme felt like something that we were going to hear multiple times throughout this year. that they're going to play Dripfield. They're going to figure out a way to jam out of it. And it's going to be really, really stunning because it's such a cool musical space for them to start with. I was so into this, and every time I've gone back and listened to this Dripfield, I've just kind of gotten goosebumps. It's a really, really great moment of the overall tour. And regardless, my thoughts on the rest of the set, that just made up for it completely.
Yeah, you get a cool pairing here too. Rosewood historically has always been a good showcase for Ben Atkins drumming specifically.
Yeah.
So you get two very killer like drum songs back to back, and I think you do get a pretty awesome segment of drumming in this Rosewood. But Ryan's right. Looking back, and we're thinking about this tour, this is the set we were expecting a Madavon in. We all had dinner beforehand. Megan from HFPod was there, and she was like, what do we expect from the show? And Ryan and I were both like,
Madavon's coming. Like
yeah.
we were 100% certain of a Madavon.
Guaranteed Madavon. But alas, no Madavon.
Alas, when it did pop up, it was not on your fantasy picks, which we'll talk about, later when we get there.
Yeah, sure.
But I think we're ready to hit Cleveland here, back in Ohio, for the first time since. What was that? First time since Legend Valley?
I think that is. Did they go there? They didn't go there for the Taboose.
Nothing in
tour,
Taboose. Was show. Since New Year's, Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, yeah.
First time in Ohio in 2023. Absolutely phenomenal way to open the show. This was for anyone who doesn't know. Quick recap: I woke up at 4:00 in the morning at Philly. I flew home to Toronto. And then at around 1:00 in the afternoon, my friend and I decided, fuck it, we're going to drive to Cleveland. And so, I drove to Cleveland on 2 hours of sleep. And we made it to our hotel like half an hour before the band went on. Luckily, shout out to friends Josh Diskin and Jeff, Captain Incredible, for saving us some seats in the balcony. But we got there just before the band went on, and it was an awesome show. Although I did kind of run out of energy towards the end of the second set. But first set here, we've got All I Need, The Whales, Caution, Jive 1, Cali Magic, Jive 2, Jive Lee. Was it the Cleveland Califecta that Jeff was calling it? I don't remember off the top of my head. But he had a very clever name for it. This All I Need is wow, absolutely amazing. This is the closest thing we've gotten to a second jam since August as well. But they take this first jam and we see that like swagger and ego Rick come into play here, where he's just ripping, as the jam's going on. It felt like kind of a slower pace than a lot of other jams we've heard come out of All I Need. The song felt like they were giving it a bit more space to breathe, at least tempo-wise. But he hits the wah, and it reminded me a lot of the Goosemas Pancakes. And this is Rick showing off, and it was awesome. And then they returned to the song, seemingly to close it out. Already would have been a fantastic jam. And then, as they're in that, like building towards that final chorus, Rick just kind of like turned around and just like shook his head at Spuds, and then just kept going off into this gorgeous Bliss jam, which was so cool. We get a nice honeybee tease from Peter. A lot of footnotes on the set list for this show. I almost ran out of space in the graphic when I was making it the next morning to post. But yeah, this was great. The Whales has grown on me a lot. We talked about this on the Day After pod. Caution is phenomenal. And then, this Jive Fecta, awesome Jive 1. Cali's always great. Jive 2 crushed, as it always does. And then the first Jive Lee in 18 shows, which is a fairly long gap for the song. We've seen a couple of gaps around that length in the past year, but the reaction from the crowd, especially because we were an hour and 20 minutes in to the set when Jive 2 ended. So, I and everybody else was ready for the set to be over after that, and they hit into that riff of Lee, and the crowd just went nuts. It was an amazing moment. This jam is amazing as well. Fantastic groove, little Feel It Now tease. When I was listening back today, I discovered a nice little Peter Bubblehouse tease in there as well. But man, what a set.
Yeah, this was a really good first set. I liked this first set. We'll talk about set 2 a little bit, but I liked this first set more than I liked the second. I thought it just had great energy, great song selection. The All I Need has that absolutely gorgeous solo at the end of it. This show started, I feel like it started a little earlier than the previous nights. I don't know. It was a Sunday night, and all I remember was I had kids in the bath. I was getting like dinner cleaned up. I was trying to clean up the house, get us ready for the week. Goose came on. All I Need's going. I'm grooving. I'm going around the house doing my chores. And then at some point, I just like stopped in front of the television and I was just like standing like a foot and a half away, just like mouth open, just like, what the fuck is going on right now? How are you guys playing such beautiful music 17 minutes into the concert? And text started coming in and I was just like, it's the magic zone of where this band is at right now. Set ending with Lee. Ryan knows this. There are all caps Lee text messages that come from me constantly because in this house we celebrate the Lee. It is the grooviest Goose song there is. I love it so much. Every time it comes on, I just get this like giant smile on my face, and the band they sound like they're jamming in a studio with nobody listening, but instead they're playing a rock concert. It's so awesome. And to have that close out getting the whole Jive Trio suite, if you will. Just a great set, tons and tons of energy, and the type of thing that you expect them to do in Ohio at this point.
Yeah, this first set is vintage Goose, and I was actually pointing this earlier when we were talking about like how first sets unfold. Mm-hmm. Goose is not known, at least historically, as like a first setty kind of band. Right. They come out there and they like lay out their ballads, and then they come out second set, and then they absolutely jam it out. And like that's what this first set is not, right? This first set is they're going to come out and like punch you in the face with like an absolutely incredible All I Need, and then just like blaze through some like hot songs all the way through, right?
So
you
well,
all of the jives, which is absolutely outstanding.
For the sixth time ever, only all three being played in the same show.
Wow,
right?
That's cool.
Yeah, and you get Caution, which is as far as covers go, this cover shows up in some pretty amazing shows. Right, like one I will point back to is Essex Junction 2020. They played Caution. Yeah, amazing show, absolutely amazing show. And so this shows up in pretty great places. But I mean, what an amazing set! And you get a couple kind of like slower sections with the Whales and California Magic, but otherwise this set, like Ryan said, packs like probably the biggest punch of a set in the whole entire tour. And it does the other thing that Goose is known to do, which is on the biggest shows, they come out there and play a really, really long set. And then you think you're in for something big. So Philly Night 2, which we already talked about, like that's an example of that where you're like, okay, so tonight's going to really crush it. Didn't really happen in the second set, which kind of points back to like vintage Goose, like 2019 Goose, where they come out there and they just absolutely kill you with one set. And then like you get another set that's maybe not so great. And I think that's actually what happens here. But what a cool set. And I mean, that All I Need is outrageously good. It's, I mean, and you were talking about the Rick Swagger thing, which like I love. When I got into this band, I think one of the reasons why I really like this band was that there's not much ego in Rick's playing. We've talked about this before. But when there is, that's also like really, really exciting. And you're starting to see that more and more. You pointed to Goosemas Pancakes, which I love a lot. I still think it's really good. And I think people don't give it as much credit as it deserves. But yeah, it's funny how my perspective has shifted. When I first liked this band, it was just like, well, they're a unit. And you don't need Trey in a band necessarily. Right. Does Trey make Fish an amazing band? Sure. But like, it doesn't have to happen. But I guess what I'm shifting on now is like, as I'm starting to see it more and more with Goose and things like this is exciting stuff. And he's capable of being that kind of insane frontman who's going to go out there and just absolutely shred and blow your mind. And it's cool when those moments come up. They're not necessary, which is part of the reason why I love this band, but they are exciting.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and just to tie a bow in it, I feel like we've watched him grow into that. So I started listening to Goose in 2019, and I was in a very similar reaction to where you like one of the appeals to me was it's not all about one member. They have this great guitarist who's clearly been to the school of Jerry Garcia and Trey Anastasio, but also they have the indie rock influence, and he is the type of guitarist that is allowing the other musicians to shine, and they're all peaking as one. You've got to imagine the last year has filled him with a lot of confidence and reassurance about his craft and about who he is. Not necessarily that he needed that, but like it's got to have been pretty good over the last year to get the professional reassurances that you are doing something really, really special. And you hear that pancakes that you talk about from Goosemas. I was standing right above you guys, and I just remember looking at that, like watching the stage. When he goes to the wah, he kind of like turns to Peter with this just like shit-eating grin on his face. Just like listen to it, almost just like listen to what we're playing right now. And the band
that was
just
when
like
I think
along it.
I think Neal and I said to each other at that moment, it's like someone's been listening to Fall 97.
Yeah, exactly.
No shit.
But this All I Need has it. And like, this show, the second set's okay. You're really lucky to get a performance like this, All I Need, in any show, regardless what else comes. So this is the thing I'll go back and listen to, and I'm just stoked about it.
Yeah, my friend and I said to each other after All I Need ended, we were like, yeah, this was worth the spontaneous drive. Like that jam alone. Like I was like, they could play 2.5 hours of my least favorite songs after that, and I would still call it a win. So set 2, we've alluded to the fact that it's not as strong as set 1, but it's not a bad set by any means. It's just doesn't flow as well and doesn't jam as well, which I guess kind of makes it a bad set. But I was like, it's not a bad set except for these 2 reasons that basically make something.
It's fine.
But
the Take On Me jam's really
time.
fun. There's really good songs played, but I don't see I haven't gone back and re-listened to it after the performance.
So we've got the drive, jamless drive, except for that ferocious guitar solo. Then we've got the first Take On Me in 196 shows. Last played December 13th, 2019.
Wow.
So that's a long one there.
That is a long time.
Take On Me with the pseudo Dave's Energy Guide jam, where Rick is basically doing it for like 3 minutes straight. Neal's going to talk about his Energy Master bullshit, whatever. But this was fun, like very classic sounding 2019 Goose jam. Like we're going to take On Me, and then we're going to play a dancey jam off of it for 10 minutes, and it's going to be tracked separately because of royalties. So it was fun. And then Into the Mist, this was a fantastic version. Not a super extended vocal ending, but get a nice little Trevor solo, get a nice little Peter solo, and then Rick takes it. So this was, cool to see from this jam. Honeybee, not the placement I'm looking for Honeybee by any means. I don't dislike the song, but I do not want to see it in this slot personally. I do want to shout out the band and crew who got surprised Coach with a new rain stick at this show. Very nice gesture to him. I heard that he was panicking initially when they were like, come out, we're playing Honeybee, because he had left his rain stick at home. Like the older one. But so, very, very nice gesture and gift by the band to show their appreciation for Coach. Got him a new rain stick. Ear to ear grin during this Honeybee. So that was nice to see. And then, straightforward arrow to close the set. Nice little Streets of Cairo action in there from Rick. And then Shama Encore. Fun set.
Yeah, this arrow, I don't know if I would call it a straightforward arrow. This is a pretty good arrow. And Arrow is one of those songs that I think we've heard enough versions of Arrow that are really long, that don't really end up anywhere, that like all other versions that come after it, we kind of immediately write them off. I don't know if that's the case with this Arrow. I don't know if I'm going back to listen to this Arrow like a whole ton, but it's a pretty good Arrow. But otherwise, on the set, like, yeah, really abbreviated drive. Take on Me is probably really cool if you're at the show.
Yeah.
I don't know if like I'm checking out Take on Me like a whole ton. Mist is always good. Honeybee placed there only for the gesture, right? This was all like kind of band theatrics to do with Coach and kind of like mess around with Coach and all of that stuff. So I mean, that's all right. It's an okay set.
I'm kind of on the same page. I will just say, Shamalama Ding Dong. I would do anything to hear that at a Goose show. I am on board with all Motown Goose covers. I will take the heat. I will take the hate. I am here for Motown Goose. Just if you're out there, guys.
So
I will be at Red Rocks, and I would love to hear this.
So I have a question for you,
Yeah,
Brian.
yeah.
So as someone who is a jam purist and also really wants to hear Shamalama Ding Dong, there have been a couple of versions of Shama, Eau Claire 2021, for example, where they open the second set with Creatures, and like 12 minutes into a Creatures that seems kind of promising, they segue into Shama. How do you feel?
So I know what you're getting at, and I think ultimately that's the one drawback for this song. I think that the song is kind of the perfect encore. Standalone, kind of a like, have you ever heard Motown and not enjoyed yourself? Like, it is just one of those styles of music that, like, when it comes on, even if you did not grow up in the 1950s and 1960s, of which I did not, you get nostalgic for like a life you never lived and like a life you've watched in the movies. And it looks like a Midwestern, dive bar on like a Saturday night when people are just like dancing and having a great time. And, just like feeling like the vibes that you felt in like boomer America when like everything was growing and the economy was amazing. It just, I don't know. It has this like just element to it that like as a standalone encore, I'm totally here for. As something cutting off a jam, I totally understand your frustrations with that.
Solid.
Yeah, that resonates. It's like Sam Cooke, right? You
Yeah.
put on Sam Cooke, everybody loves it, right?
Right.
So like it's never bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that actually perspective on Shama. I'm going to take a new kind of look on Shama and put it in that light. I mean,
Potato,
I haven't always loved it.
Shama.
Yeah. So I was at Eau Claire, so I know what you're talking about, Ryan. But in any case,
yeah.
Shall we move on to the next show?
Yes.
All right. So March 28th, Georgia Theater, Athens, and this show is a really, really interesting show. Before I start reading off the set list, like kind of some commentary on the show itself, this is the show that you get when Goose plays like a 2018 Goose show in 2023. Like it feels like they're playing at a bar. They're playing in front of people that have never seen the band before. And they just want to go out there and play a selection of songs that are going to, let people have fun. And I think that's what you get with this show. I think there are ways to look at the show. I think you can criticize it and say it didn't have a lot of what you were looking for in a Goose show. But if you listen back to like old Goose, when they're playing in like very, very tiny rooms in Connecticut, this is the kind of show that you would expect to get. Maybe, you'd get a couple more jams, but like this is an exciting show. I think it's a fun show and it's really, really cool. So to dive into the set, you get in set one, Tumble, an actually pretty good Time to Flee. And then Green River, Flow Down, you get Thatch Again, which they've been playing the hell out of. I think it's like 5 times so far this year. Silver Rising, then Empress of Organos. And then again, we were talking earlier about kind of Goose playing songs from like the early aughts or 2010s that like, remind you of music that maybe you were listening to back then. You get Trevor Reed's poetry and Trevor Reed's Fuck the Pain Away by Peaches, which reminds me of college so much. But, maybe I'm old and a lot of folks didn't know, but I knew what it was right away. A bunch of my roommates used to listen to this song on like a Friday or Saturday night right before going out. It was, I lived with like a like kind of a split house of like guys and girls.
What year was this? Sorry.
So it was a split house. there was 8 of us living in a house. I think there was like 4 girls, 4 guys. And they would put the song on before we went out, which is like amazing. Out of all the songs on earth to choose to do, kind of incredible. Little crass, but good. And they finished it off with like an Empress kind of section to close that actually is pretty hot. I enjoy the hell out of this like last section of Empress. Once again, you get it's the year of Big T. Trevor is incredible, and he leads the jam out of this and does a really, really good job of being in charge of the jam, which I don't think you really see a lot of Trevor. But there's a confidence there. It's not just that Trevor's playing's improved. It's that he has more confidence in his playing, and he's willing to step out in front and do these kinds of things. Not saying the Trevor Reed's poetry part, but more like leading out of the jam. So like overall, this is a really fun set. It's long when you read it on paper in terms of like the number of distinct items that were played in the set. But, overall pretty cool. And then also in front of, I think, the smallest crowd they played in front of in quite a while, if not only just this tour.
Well, since December. But yeah, this is a fun, I was about to say fun thatch, which it is. But this is a fun set for sure. Tumble, straightforward 20-minute tumble opener, which again, another thing where it's like, they open with a 20-minute tumble. Whatever. Like, pretty cool that we can do things like that. Yeah, this flea went in a cool, interesting direction, a rare unfinished version. Great segue into Green River. Great cover. We see that Chugel coming in once again, which is like, coined by CCR. So flow down, of course, the thatch, that was the goat thatch for a whole 4 days. Pretty impressive that, they one-upped it again immediately. And then Silver Rising, which is always such a great song. And then Neal, you kind of covered it all in this Empress. I really, really like the jam on the back end. I personally had not heard "Fuck the Pain Away" before, but I enjoyed. I enjoy a poetry reading.
I loved this whole set. I loved this whole show. This had a vibe to it that I was there for on a Tuesday night. It felt like it matched being in a bar-esque venue, like you guys are saying, the sense of playing in front of newer ears and trying to win people over, but also playing in a very loose way. A lot of jam bands come down to Georgia and they have an absolute blast. It seems to be a part of the country, and the Athens, Atlanta stretch in particular, where people are just having a really, really good time. You hear about this in the NBA. If you play in Atlanta on a back-to-back, you are completely screwed, because you come to Atlanta, you party. There's some things that you get into that you don't get into in other cities in America. And you show up on the court and the Hawks just completely wipe the floor with you. Goose came and brought that kind of energy to Athens. It was very, very cool. Peter coming out wearing the Georgia Bulldogs shirt. Tumble's my favorite Goose song. Coming out and opening the show with a 20-minute tumble. I'm totally here for that. The Chugel, Out of Time to Flee. I love Flowdown. I'm a huge, huge Flowdown fan. That is where I think that they tap into the possum energy. That feels like Goose's possum to me. Maybe controversial statement right here. This is my favorite thatch played to date. The dissonance that they get into, I'm really, really into it. I like this just ever so slightly more than Nashville, although I think the Nashville version is fantastic. Silver Rising, great ballad right there. And then to close this out with just a killer Empress, goes into poetry, goes into Fuck the Pain Away. I was right there with you, Neal. I knew what that was. Friends and I were texting each other, laughing about it. I mean, it's just one of those things that takes you back when you hear a song like this. And for Goose to kind of tap in that energy, it's them saying, hey, elder millennials, we see you as well. We know that you guys are fans of this band, and we are here for you. We are not just Gen Z band.
Yeah, even though I don't think I've ever seen an audience where the median age is so close to mine.
I know, right?
At any jam band show
it.
ever.
They see us,
so
they appreciate
cool of them to do that kind of thing where tickets were pretty much only available to Georgia.
That was cool.
Georgia State University,
University of Georgia.
University of Georgia.
They made it available. It sounds like at the Student Union. Just a very cool move.
Or there was like a box office, but you could only get tickets if you were a student. So there were so many people around my age at the show. It was like weird to see on the webcast. It's like, wait, it's young white guys instead of old white guys? Like what?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was cool that they did that. I mean, it would be neat if they did more shows like this, right? This was a staple of what made Phish great, right? Like if you think about like 92, 91, they were just like going and playing colleges and like, like fraternity party basements and like
burning down a frat
and, like,
party. Yeah.
I think that actually built like, the following that they ended up like having like later on. And cool that Goose is doing this now. They don't really have to do this. I think the whole model has changed. But they wanted to play Athens, which is an incredibly historic place. You think about the bands that have played in Athens over the years, like jam bands, like indie rock bands, or
the bands that are from.
Like,
Athens.
I mean, it's such a cool place, and cool that they showed up and kind of played this show there. It's nice that they kind of showed up and said, like, let's do a different show for this crowd.
It feels like a college party show.
Absolutely.
It feels kind of like anything can happen. We're going to reference this. This song will segue into this. Like, it's just, I love everything about it.
Yeah. There's more improv in this show, like packed into this really good college party show than another kind of Southern party show, which, happens later in the tour. So I'm kind of, these two shows bookending the Ryman run. It's interesting to look at how they're executed differently, but there's one very compelling piece of improv, I feel, in this second set that, while not making my playlist, it is something that I have listened to a bunch already.
So we're talking about Slow Ready right now? Is that what we're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
Let's do it. So second set, we get Arcadia opener, then Slow Ready into Rock the Casbah. Jeff fans rejoice. We finally get a lead vocal performance from Jeff. And then you get a Hot Tea, Turn Clouds Hot Tea. And then, of course, the Escape, the always divisive Escape Encore, the Pina Colada song. So...
shout out to the guy in the hotel.
Who just absolutely like trashed Goose for playing. I don't know. The funny thing is, like, I don't want to like spend my time talking about this set, talking about Escape. Yeah, but
Escape.
Like it's grown on me as a song. I mean, it is a throwaway song.
And a show like this,
it's super fun as an encore.
It's perfect show.
And like I saw them encore with this in Montana. And I was actually like live streaming the show because it like wasn't streamed, and like I think it picked me up like trashing Escape like on the live stream, which I was embarrassed about. But like no, like looking back, like it's, I don't know, it's fun. It's a fun song, and it's okay to have fun at.
It has its place.
It is.
I feel like it works better here than it does encoring a show like Bozeman last
year. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like I said, I think when we talk about this stuff, like we get bogged down in talking about jams, and we want to hear high quality improv, but sometimes it's okay to have fun at a show. I think we have to remind some of our friends that every once in a while. And yeah, this show is a fun show. Take it at face value. It is a fun show, not a bad encore. But yeah, I mean, you get some really cool stuff in this set otherwise. you get an Arcadia to open off a set, which, like, I mean, Jesus, that's great. And then, you get the best Slow Ready they've played in a while, which is also pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you guys. I thought the energy of, what we talked about in the last show, the Cleveland show, where there was a ton of energy in set 1 and it didn't seem to carry over into set 2. I felt as though it carried over here into set 2, where I feel like this was a complete show. I have it ranked as my number 6 show of the overall year so far, which, some might say, is that low? I don't know. I have it on my list. I like it a lot. I thought this was a total vibe. It was the kind of show that if I was at, I'd want to have an edible and a couple of beers, and I would just be smiling and like in a groove. Like there's nothing insanely mind blowing played, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. And I think that that's part of the reason. I was texting with a buddy the morning afterwards. He went to bed after set 1. We were both streaming it, and he was like, "How was set 2?" And I was like, "I loved it so much." I said, "I loved the entire show." And he goes, "You enjoyed Turn Clouds and Escape late in the second set?" And I was like, they both fit perfectly. Like, I'm not a huge Turn Clouds fan. I've texted like essays to Ryan about why I don't like Turn Clouds.
You have texted essays in defense of and against a lot of songs.
Well, but Turn Clouds, I really,
which is
like.
a testament to your,
Right.
how verbose you are about this kind of stuff.
This song worked in such a wonderful segue out of Hot Tea, and it added to the overall energy of the set, where it was incredibly loose, felt like anything could happen. The highlight obviously here is Slow Ready, which was the first of 2 times where I freaked out thinking that we were going into Eminence Front. I still think it's got to be on the table. They are messing around with the theme from that song. But this was a great Slow Ready. I think this was my favorite Slow Ready since Charlotte last year. Does that sound right? Are there any I'm forgetting at that point between now and then, or then?
Yeah, no, this is the first kind of really jammed out one since Charlotte last year. There have been a few where they've kind of used the ending of Slow Ready and that arpeggiator to segue into something else. This is the first time that they really jammed it out, which is why I think we all initially were like, oh, they're going to go into Eminence Front here, because it's been so long since they actually jammed it. And it's been used as like a springboard for segues. So yeah, this was awesome. Crowd sing along in Arcadia, which is of course always such a great tune. And yeah, this was a fun. It felt very accidental stumbling onto Turn Clouds, especially because they just played it a couple of shows prior. But yeah, it was really cool to kind of hear musically. They're playing Hot Tea. Peter goes to piano. Turn Cloud starts in the same key. And it felt they were just kind of like, oh, we're playing Turn Clouds now. Okay. And they went with it. So that's a cool thing, when something like that isn't planned. It just kind of happens. Yeah. That's you guys got anything else on this one, or shall we hit Nashville?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
All right, so first night at the Ryman, we have the Atlas duo. We don't have a name for this yet. This is the second time these 2 songs have been played together. I believe it was the other way in the fall.
Alice.
But we have Atlas Dogs into Atlas, followed by Butterflies, Indian River, Everything Must Go, and Rockdale. I absolutely adore this set. This might be the only set that rivals Cleveland first set for me for this tour. I really love how it played out, the flow, the jams, the execution. Like, this Atlas jam gets to some really cool places and it's relatively short runtime. Butterflies is killer. I don't understand the dislike for this song. I really love this song. Yeah. This is one of Peter's best songs to me, and I love, of course, the weird time signature ending. Indian River, the band claims, or Peter claims, that this is the Welcome to Delta arpeggiator jam that happened here, which I hear how maybe it's like a reworked Welcome to Delta jam, but nobody ever actually plays the Welcome to Delta riff. So in good faith, I can't note it as being a Welcome to Delta jam, even though Peter told me that that's what it is. So, That's
bold.
that's the dilemma.
That's bold. It's going against what the band member told you. But hey, I mean,
my ears don't lie. You guys agree? They don't play the
maybe
Welcome to Delta riff.
It sounds like its own
Yep.
unique thing to me, but
it was really cool.
It's just a jam in
It
Indian
was really
River.
cool. I do enjoy that little
yeah,
piece.
it was
And
really cool.
it's nice that they did something different because, to be honest with you, the Welcome to Delta jam tacked on to the end of Indian River was getting, I don't know, like a little bit long. I don't want to say boring, but like you knew that you were like locked into
Predictable.
12 minutes of stuff that like you've heard before, and like you weren't going to get anything that was going to knock your socks off necessarily. And I know, like, if Jive Goose were here, that's exactly what he would say.
Yeah.
And I agree 100%.
Probably in harsher
probably.
terms.
Yeah, you get that. I don't know, man. But yeah, I mean, like, for sure, it is really cool, and it's nice that they're mixing up that song a little bit and doing different things with it. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty great. But I mean, there's so much good stuff in this set. Brian and I talked about this. Brian Brinkman. This Butterflies jam, to me, I've said this a bunch, like you get this droning jam in it that is like part of the song that I think can absolutely be fleshed out. It reminds me of like early 2000s, like Yola Tango, or maybe even like, like early 2000s. And like you can just hear what can be done with that. That can be stretched out for another 5 minutes. And I would love if the band just took the opportunity to do it. And I've said it a ton on this podcast already, but that 15-minute version, that 20-minute version of Butterflies, it's coming. They just need to be brave enough to do it.
It's coming.
And like, I just hope it's soon.
Yeah, I loved this overall set. I'm right there with you.
We only got halfway through, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. This set ends with a really nice "Everything Must Go" in Rockdale. I just to your point, I loved the overall vibe of it. It was very, very similar to Cleveland. The Indian River, I really dig the that ending jam to it because it fits the reworked 80s synth take on it. Like
right.
This fits it a little bit better than Welcome to Delta. So while I've heard some Welcome to the Delta jams off of Indian River that I really liked, I believe, what was it? June 6th last year from Essex has a really nice one. I believe that 429 has a really nice one as well. I may have that date off by 1 or 2 dates.
427 or 20. 428.
Yeah, it was sometime in late April last year, right around the time that they played
show.
Sweetwater.
I think 428
was Charleston. Either way, those were two of my favorite jams from last year. Made my year-end list. This one I really dug. I think I have it. Just looking at it, just like at the bottom of tier 2 for me. Just really, really solid first set version. And then Rockdale, great Rockdale to end it. Just a ton of energy.
Yeah.
My brother and I were watching this on the couch, and every time they went for a peak and we thought it was the last peak, he just went, "Oh my God, Rick, what are you doing?" And he was just like so happy, so into it. And just like a great way to close down a really, really solid, strong set.
This is, in my opinion, the best Rockdale played in Nashville. I think this is better than the one from last year. This one ranks high on my playlist right now. I tweeted earlier today. It gets better every time I listen to it.
I'm looking at my list. I have this
jam
pretty high up. I think this is like in my top 15 right now. It's a really, really good version.
I have it higher up than that. But I love this Rockdale so much. And I mean, this Everything Must Go, also we'd be remiss if we skipped over it entirely. You get a few little seconds of kind of maybe we're going somewhere else. So potential for the future, but song continues to kill. What a beautiful first set on paper, musically. No notes. I'm very happy.
Yeah, this Rockdale's good. It's a really good Rockdale, like Brian said. I've been known to count off peaks in Rockdales because it's like a fun thing to do, because you get like they're not even false peaks.
Yeah.
It's just like like a peak and then a peak and then a peak and then a peak, and it's just such a great song, man. And this is a very, very good version of the song. Certainly the best they've played this year. I don't know if I'm going to go in full agreement with you on the best they've ever played in Nashville, but it's good. It's really, really good.
Yeah, hell yeah. And then set 2 of the show, we get Wisteria Lane, The Way It Is, Creatures, Pancakes, White Lights. This is, I believe, the first non-core show of the year. They ran up against the Nashville curfew. But this Wisteria is my current jam of the year. This, to me, is absolutely phenomenal. You know, you have these 2 distinct sections. And I listened to it, I think, 3 times today. All 3 times they get to the end of that first really raging section, and I'm like, yeah, that jam's really good, but maybe I'll move it down a couple spots. Then I go, and I'm like, oh wait, there's still 12 minutes left. Never mind. So just really, really amazing jam. Great segue into The Way It Is. Sorry, RJ, that this happened the show before you were there. You'll get it eventually. And then, Creatures, Pancakes, very, very solid jams, and then a very quick White Lights to close it out. But all in all, great set. I think it lacks a bit of the flow of the first set, but this is overall one of the strongest shows of the year so far, I think.
Yeah, I've got this Wisteria Lane as my number 2 jam of the year. You and I are very predictable. Our jams of the year are the exact same songs that they were last year. Mine was the Madhuvan from Raleigh. Yours was the Wisteria Lane from San Francisco, correct?
Yep.
So we both need Goose to break that cycle at some point and give us something that
yeah,
that makes me change
play
from
good jams out of other songs.
I'm a Madhuvan bias. I mean, it's hard not to be with this band, but and we'll talk about that in a couple shows. But I loved this Wisteria Lane, that groove that they fell into, that riff that they kept playing, and just rising all together. There was I mentioned this, Neal, when we did the pod, but there's that there's the camera on Peter as they all hit on the groove and as they all kind of rise with the groove, and the whole crowd's reacting, and Peter's got this big smile on his face. It was just such a cool moment in the shows, kind of similar to what we were talking about with the jam earlier in this 6.5 hour long episode that I'm blanking on right now. But it was that thing of a riff, and once that riff takes hold, the whole band takes hold and the crowd feels it. It's just such a special moment. Only other thing I'll say about this, I mean, I really like the Pancakes, but I really like Creatures in this spot in a show. I don't necessarily love Creatures opening a second set, but if you throw Creatures midway through a second set, I feel like it just works really nicely, as it's not going to anchor the whole overall set, but it's just going to add to the overall vibe of it. It's going to groove, and this was a really cool little version. Pancakes raged, and then White Lights as the faux encore. These 48 to 60-minute set breaks are part of the reason why we don't get encores sometimes. So, we could adjust that from a structural standpoint, but I'm torn, because if we did that, we don't get this Wisteria Lane right here, because it was one of those moments where everything just connected. So love this Wisteria, love this set one. I think overall, I have this set, or this whole show, ranked third of the year for me, basically on the entire first set into the start of set 2. So really, really good stuff.
Yeah. Only thing to add, is this is a strong Wisteria and a different Wisteria. This one is just a rocker.
Yeah.
There's no kind of exploring super psychedelic spaces, which I think you get a lot of in Wisterias. This one just kind of rocks throughout. Doesn't have the darkness I think that we got in some Wisterias from last year. But it's really cool. I think I'm not as high on this Wisteria as others, especially Ryan. But it's good. It's a very good Wisteria, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's something missing from this that I could have used more of. There, I don't know. Maybe I'm comparing it to Wisterias of the past, because we got so many good ones. If you think about through 15 shows last year, what we had. The body of music that we had to look at, and the Wisteria that we got through 15 shows last year, it's very different when juxtaposed against this. This one's kind of straightforward. I think it will be eclipsed in short time. I think many of the jams that we're talking about actually on this tour will be eclipsed in short time. But yeah, I mean, it's good. It's got a lot. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I don't know. I wish it just had more uniqueness to it. But this one kind of feels like it sounds like other like Goose jams to me, and I wanted more from it. But like, I think maybe I'm the outlier on this one because plenty of people have said like it's absolutely wrong, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. But you know what? Like, I have to say it because, like,
I mean,
we all say that to each
it's
other.
true. But I have to say it. I have to say it about this particular wisteria. But you know, the way it is that came out of this is like amazing. You come from this like giant peak that's like coming out of the end of this wisteria where it's just like kind of this rumbling jam, and then you get the wisteria that comes out of the back, or the way it is that comes out of the back end. Really cool and great to throw that song in there. Awesome. Poor RJ. Everybody knew that he wanted that one, and didn't happen. Just one night before, which Goose has been known to do. If for some reason or another you put it out into the universe that you are dying to see a song, they're going to play it either the show before you go or the show after. Case in point, the show after I was at the Capitol Theater, they played Jeff Eggboard, which is the only Goose original I have not yet seen. So there you go. That's what happens.
Wow. I think you bring up a really interesting point about the wisteria, and I'll be curious if this 5-6 months from now looks like a fairly standard jam. I think the thing that I enjoy the most about it is it's a 2-part jam, and that first real rock segment just like aligns around a really hypnotic riff. But as this band is developing, as they're evolving in real time, that approach may seem outdated in 5-6 months. And I think, to your point, like, there were more exploratory jams than this type of approach in March of 2022. And so this may feel, I don't know, basic's the wrong word, but like, I think that there is a simplicity to it that just like relies on groove and energy that connects with a lot of people. And at this point in the year, really, really connects with listeners. But I'll be curious to hear if kind of your thoughts on it like pan out, where like over the next 6 months, like they play 3 or 4 more wisterias that just like raise the bar on the song. Because it is a song that's in that period in time in the band's history where like every version seems to raise the bar on where the song is at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
all right.
Yeah,
March 31st.
night 2, Ryman. And like, this is a pretty interesting night. So March 31st at the Ryman.
Mm-hmm.
So set 1, you get Turbulence, set opener, which I love. Dr. Darkness. I mean, this whole first set, actually, like to pause, is kind of really, really interesting when we're kind of going back and forth between talking about like Goose going at like to punch you in the mouth with the first set, and then Goose going out and like playing with a, you know, very first set. But that's what we get here. So Dr. Darkness, the Whales, and then Ate Up All the Cake, which, you know, Goose can play this like anytime, in any set, and
they have
it
67
place.
shows,
and I absolutely am going to love it. And it was killer at this particular show. Then you get Elizabeth, and then finally you get Not Alone. So this is the second Not Alone that they've played, and I think it was like, what, how many show gap at this point? Like close to 10, if not 10. And yeah, so
10.
I mean, we were wondering when this song was going to come back around again. I mean, it's a slower song. It probably didn't hit that hard at the Cap when they debuted it, but I think this song is a remarkable piece of music. And I was worried at this point that they weren't going to play it again. Like maybe they just like played it and they were like, you know what, this one wasn't ready. We're not going to play it again. But they did. They played it here, and it's such a beautiful song. It's so good. And this is another one of those songs that like I can't wait to hear what happens when they bring it back into the studio, and then they close off the set with this Arrow. I don't have a whole ton to say about this set. I think there are some people out there who are really upset by this set, and when I say that, some people, I say Chop. I think he had a lot of words to say about this set. And I think that's actually like colored my view of the set. I think there are pieces of the set that are absolutely beautiful and certainly worth revisiting. I think Goose playing Bon Iver anytime is awesome and worth revisiting. You slap that on your playlist, whatever, like your driving to work playlist. And then again, this return of Not Alone, and it came back so great. And I think it's such a killer song. So I mean, there are elements of this set that are worth looking at and being excited about. But otherwise, I mean, this is ultimately a jam-free set until the very end.
Yeah, the last 5 or 6 minutes of Arrow are
Yep.
really, really good. I think, but it's pretty standard Arrow up until around the 20-minute mark, or wherever that is that happens. Brian's shaking his head, so I'm excited to hear his take on this. But I think this is definitely the best Arrow in a long time.
Since Peach?
Yep.
Yeah,
it is.
Probably.
I think so for sure. We're used to seeing these long arrows that don't really get to much. This one got to some stuff, which was very, very exciting. But yeah, I agree with you, Neal. Love the Bon Iver cover. 67 show gap is too long. It's too many shows to go without playing this amazing, amazing song, especially when you're getting like 4 Electric Avenues in that in that time. But yeah, otherwise, not a ton to say about this set. More Chugling and Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm right with you guys. I have nothing to say about pretty much the entire set until Arrow. Decent song selection, very first set. The type of thing that like a lot of Fish fans have come to expect from Fish, or to like pair it with like another jam band. It felt kind of like a late 80s, early 90s Dead set, where it's just kind of like, these are some songs we play. We're just going to play them. There's no real pressure for anyone here. We're just kind of like playing music in this. I'm sure that the venue sounded beautiful for them, so to play some of these songs in there made a lot of sense. But this Arrow, man, it's my number 5 jam of the year right now. Peter and his synths add such a new idea, so many new ideas, such new tones to the approach for Arrow. I could not agree with you more. Arrow became this inside joke among friends and I that like, well, the Goose set came out, or the Goose show came out on Nugs, and they played a 28-minute Arrow, and it sounds exactly like the last Arrow that you heard that was 28 minutes long. And I'm always here for a 28-minute jam, even if it doesn't do anything. But Arrow just kind of got a little sterile by the end of the year. And there's some decent versions, but like 2 of the first 4 Goose shows I saw had amazing Arrows. Denver Sculpture Park 710 has a really cool jam at the end. And then they open up with a 24-minute Arrow on 1122 at the Mission Ballroom that isn't the greatest, but like it was just a really good way to usher in the tour finale. This was the first time I was really excited about Arrow since about mid 2021, late 2021, and I thought this was an outstanding version. I've watched it since the show happened. I've listened back to it multiple times. It's all about the keys, and it kind of adds to my favorite thing about this tour is Peter's keys, Trevor's bass just added, they percolated up through the sound. And I don't know if that's a mix thing, or I don't know if that's intentionality in terms of the way that the band is evolving, but you could hear their contributions in a way that, not that you couldn't in the past, but they just felt more dynamic. It felt more immediate in terms of their overall approach. And this Arrow really signifies that from a Peter standpoint for me. So rest of the set happened. It was there.
Love this Arrow also. I didn't say that when I was kind of reading off the set, but it's the Peter show. This is Peter kind of doing like whatever Peter wants. And it hit. And like, I'm surprised Ryan is not the biggest supporter of this, being the keyboard aficionado that he is. But this Arrow is good, and it gives me hope for Arrow, or Arrows to come. It is a very, very good Arrow. I think, again, the funny thing about Arrow is we've heard enough Arrows that sounds the same all the way throughout that we've kind of become desensitized to like what a good Arrow really is. And I think there are a couple Arrows back to back that like aren't so bad. They're actually pretty decent. And this Arrow,
I like the Cap version.
So like, this Arrow is, I think, really good. I think this one deserves more listens from me. I haven't really gone back and listened to it a ton, but I do think that one aspect, like when we were talking about it, like in group chat that particular night, we were saying like, this is the Peter show. Like Peter's like finally showing up and just doing like whatever the hell he wants. And it's taking the band to really great places. I
think it's worth noting, just looking at Arrow's stats, it's only been played 41 times, and it only has 3 versions after its debut that have been in a 10 or more show gap. This is a song that immediately went into the rotation, almost immediately became a jam vehicle. We're now 3-4 years into this song's development. It could become something completely different in the next 4 or 5 years. They could figure out a way to like lead it into jamming territory that we don't expect right now. I think one of the nice things about this song is it's always been one of those songs that's just been a reliable jam vehicle for the band. You think about the Red Rock show, not a ton of jamming happening at that show. They play Arrow to open up the second set, and it's really that one time that they just allowed themselves to just go with the music, forget about the environment, forget about where they were at, and just like play a jam. It's not the greatest jam, but it works in that moment to give us jam heads at Red Rocks like the big type 2 moment of the overall show. So I'm really curious to hear where this song goes over the course of this year, because the first 2 versions have been stunning.
Awesome.
Alrighty. So second set, we get Hunger Sight, and then Feel It Now, big return, Bob Dawn, Drive, and Rosewood Heart. And this Rosewood Heart is just wonderful. But also, like, I mean,
Yes.
you have a set like bookended with like absolutely incredible songs. I think this Hunger Sight is really, really good. It does like I mean, what I think Hunger Sight really should do. You look back at like Philly Hunger Sight. There's some people out there who really love that one from like the Philly run. But like this is what Hunger Sight should do. Start off your second set with this incredibly strong song that has an equally strong jam segment to it that I think is absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, you get another version of Feel It Now, which is awesome. And then you get like Bob Dawn, which has like the amazing guitar solo, which I've like already like touched on. And then you get an abbreviated Drive, which is kind of a bummer. And then this Rosewood Heart, which I think is, I don't know, I just love it. I love this version of Rosewood Heart. I think Rick's phrasing in this one, he really leans into this kind of like non-linear like soloing thing where like he doesn't end phrases in this jam, which he does, I think, through like a lot of Rosewoods historically, but I think he does it better here than he does in many, many Rosewoods. And then it leads into a jam that I think is absolutely spectacular. And I'm going to revisit a ton. I'm a big fan of Rosewoods, but like I do want to touch on Rick's phrasing in this, which is it's just perfect. It's very Jerry-esque. It never ends. He never resolves on anything.
Yeah.
He's just continuing to go, and it never gets boring or like weird or repetitive. It's fucking killer, man. Like that's all I can say about it.
Yeah, you had said that. Yeah, you had said that on the day after recap, and I went back and listened, with that in mind, and I was really struck by like, wow, like that. It's a really good way of putting it. But yeah, this is a cool set. Not a ton of deep improv outside of the Rosewood. Again, Flamethrower, Hunger Sight, Feel It Now is great, lots of fun. This is a hot Bob Dawn. And again, more mid-second set Bob Dawn's feeling like amazing, amazing placement for this song right now. And, we're big proponents of the Bob Dawn with, but, Neal, we were talking about the night of the show and kind of after the show, like with would not have been the right move here.
Right.
So this worked well without, if you will. And then another jamless Drive, which I'm hoping this doesn't become a trend. We started the year off with this incredible 28-minute version at the cap, and then we've seen 2 jamless versions since then. So hopefully that does not continue. But yeah, I want to, Neal, you cover this Rosewood really well. I want to highlight that section at the end where Rick and Peter get into this, like ascending lick thing that they do. And the rest of the band latches onto it. And it's just a really cool moment of interplay. But Brian, I know you have a lot to say on this Rosewood, and I want to throw it over to you to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the same page about the Jerry licks and the way that Rick took the lead on there. I think Rosewood it's probably the deadiest Goose song we have, where you have this like quasi ballad that has just really interesting introspective lyrics, and it leads into a jam that it doesn't need to be fast, but sometimes it turns itself into a groove, like the version from the Cap. Sometimes it can be really exploratory with no resolution. Like it just allows the band to kind of sit back and just ride a really interesting musical passage. And this one does it until we get to the end of it, where it moves into like this very brief but very exciting fall 94 jamming from Goose, where we just get like weird time signatures and they stop and then they start yelling and then there's distortion and there's feedback and it just like all logic is gone. I mentioned this at the top of this, like when we were talking about patience. This ending segment is kind of that next step of patience I would love to hear from this band, where they allow themselves to take a step off the cliff. It's very dangerous. Failure can happen musically.
Blanket touching.
It's blanket touching. Absolutely. You can play music that your fan base or members of your fan base actively hate and are offended and repulsed by, but it's those types of challenges, those types of moments that bring a band together, that bring fans together, that terrify everyone. And then you got your blanket right there. You come back to the resolution of Rosewood. You know everything's going to be okay. You got an encore of Empress. Like everything is going to be good. We're going to be fine. We're just kind of meddling with the darkness over here. And I don't want to push this band in any sort of direction, but I would love to hear more of that terrain, that Glens Falls Madhuvan sound that I love so much that Goose is tapping
I put this in the same category as the Redbird from Roadrunner that kind of starts this tour, where they find this space incredibly fast. And it's such a cool, amazing space. Like it's not something that happens like slow or over time, but it's just awesome. And this is the kind of stuff that I get excited about. This Rosewood is like one of those things that like when they're doing that end segment there where it's like almost start stoppish, where like they all are just so incredibly locked in. Like this is the kind of thing you get when Goose strings together a whole bunch of shows. Like they really are improvising incredibly well and listening to each other incredibly well. The way that like you said, Rick and Peter kind of started on this thing and then percussion picks up right on it and like is right there with them. I mean, that shit's exciting. That is cool stuff. And yeah, this Rosewood, absolutely killer. And then of course, Empress Encore.
Yeah, man.
Not much to say about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you said, Brian, there are people in the fan base that will hate it, and then there are crazy people like us who will absolutely go nuts for it. So, hell yeah. Moving into night 3 of the Ryman, April Fool's Day, April 1st. Band comes out for the first set, dressed as each other. I mentioned this on the day after show pod, but fans of how this Jive Lee opener sounded should go back and check out the June 19th, 2020 rotation jam from the Bingo Tour. Same exact configuration. You got Peter on bass, Rick on drums, Trevor on guitar, Jeff on keys, and Spuds on percussion. And it's a really cool improvisational moment. But this was great. You had the little details like, Spuds thrown in this set is for the ladies, as Jeff, Jeff taking the picture of the crowd and saying like, we're really stoked to be here as Peter. And of course, after the song, Rick as Spuds shouting out his second cousin, Dennis, who's not at the show or watching the stream, but wishing him a happy birthday.
So good.
Regardless. So they nailed the bit, the costumes. We've all seen that, the Peter as Trevor, the Peter as Trevor memes. But year of Big P for a shining 4 minutes. It was the
He's
year
a bass
of
player,
Big
man.
P. Man, Peter can rip up that bass. He sounded amazing. He was driving this Lee. I don't know if I've ever seen Jeff so focused while playing music. Like he was really, he was making sure he was hitting that G chord right on the organ, which was a lot of fun. But from there, we move into a fantastic first set, particularly segment towards the end of it. But we get a flow down next, always fun. Lead up continues to be awesome. Blood Buzz, Ohio. What an amazing cover. Again, you guys have the more indie background than I do. Like I hadn't heard this song before Goose covered it, but I really love the way they do it. And then we get, in my opinion, the perfect tumble, which they discovered by accident back in the fall. For anyone who doesn't know, the first time they did vibey tumble, or tumble, if you will, into regular tumble, they had planned on opening the show in New Orleans with regular tumble, but Coach had written the accent on the set list. And so when they went on stage, Peter started setting up the vibey intro thing. And so they were like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And then Rick decided in the middle of the vibey tumble jam, like, fuck it, I'm just going to start playing the composed section to regular tumble. Then they transitioned into the jam there. So here it felt right, felt very well executed. This tumble was fiery. It was amazing. It's not on my playlist, but I've gone back to it a whole bunch because I love the vibey version. I love the way they transition, and I love the way that the jam goes. Peter's guitar tone in the early section of this jam is absolutely nuts. It is nuts. It sounds so good. And then, of course, we get Thatch, which is the Peter show once again. Clav everywhere. So much clav. I love clav. I don't know if anybody knows that about me, but I'm a big fan of what happens here. That like last build where he just like hammers the low end of the clav with no wah on it. It's like a machine gun firing. So cool. Thatch fucks. Anyway, yeah. Great.
Also, like an incredibly fortunate glitch in the live stream. If you were watching the live stream like I was,
yes,
it actually like stops on like Peter just kind of like going like this, like over and over and over again from like a side angle. Which of course you can't hear if you're listening to this, but like is incredible, and it's so good. And there's there are images out there where you can watch like that segment, and it's like totally worth checking out. Really cool, but like what a good set, man. I mean, this set, standing alone, not even thinking about the second set, which is outrageously good, is just awesome. Like I feel like they were loose and they were having fun and they were just letting things happen, which that is what happens when you get the best Goose, right? And so, they came out there, they did the gag, they left for a little bit, came back, and I don't know, it's something about the band when they're just having fun and playing music, and you just get really kind of amazing stuff. And that flow down to come back, and then the lead up, which is awesome, and then Blood Buzz, which is like one of my favorite covers that they do. I think I kind of lump like all of these. I think I say that like anytime we talk about one of their indie rock covers, but this one's killer. Like I love the National. I've loved the National forever. It's outrageous that this band plays covers by the National, and such a good song. And the really interesting thing is when we talk about songs that they've picked out to cover as like incredible vocal performances, Rick's voice sounds nothing like the lead vocalist from the National. Nothing at all. Like he's like very baritone singer. Rick is not that. And so they actually in some ways make this cover their own, and is still pretty great. So sometimes like they're doing it true to the original artist, and then there's this, which is very different than kind of how the National originally did it. And what an awesome band. I think they are somewhat like hooked in with the jam band scene to some degree or another. They have the dead covers out there in the universe that you can go and listen to, and so I think this is great. And like any set that it shows up in is awesome. This tumble, also awesome. We've talked about this before on the podcast. This mix up of the tumble or tumble, and the best parts of both songs, really, right? You get that composed section of the regular tumble, and then the jam that comes out of tumble. Killer. And it doesn't have to be like the jam of the year to enjoy this. This, like, I've gone back and listened to a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Outrageously good. And then this Thatch, of course, as we keep talking about Thatch on this kind of arc over time, this Thatch is outrageously good. And yeah, the Peter show. That one section he does with the clav is so ridiculously cool. And yeah, I love everything about this set.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I'll echo everything you guys said, but I thought the intro, the the gag, excuse me, from Jive Lee. It was one of my favorite things that they've done thus far this year. It was a moment that connected them to Fish, to the Dead. It was the type of just like super inside joke, super in their own heads, like inside baseball type of moment from the band that you only get in this kind of relationship between a band and their audience. I love indie music. Part of the problem with indie music is that you don't have people going repeatedly to see the same band over and over and over again. My favorite indie artists I've seen maybe a handful of times to this point in time. You go and see a band like Goose, you go and see a band like Fish, you went and saw a band like The Dead over and over and over again. And it's not just because of the jams. It's because of what happens in this Jive Lee. Like you said, Ryan, how much these guys know about each other and about what we love about them and about what we laugh about at them and with them, and them to then like throw that back in our faces in such a way like this. It was brilliant. It was beautiful. It made me laugh. My wife was laughing. It was excellent. Blood Buzz. I mean, High Violet was my number one album of 2010, number 3 album of the overall decade. Blood Buzz was probably my favorite song of the last decade. I don't think any song better summarizes what it felt like to be like 25 years old in 2010, with financial crisis, with politics right at that time. Like Blood Buzz is just one of those songs that perfectly outlines what that experience was like. Every time I hear them play that, it's one of my favorite things they do. The Tumblé, the Thatch to close it out. I have both of them on my kind of larger 2023 playlist. They didn't make my kind of jams playlist, but I love them both. I thought that they closed out the set really well. This kind of reminded me of the Athens show in some ways, where it was loose. It was vibey. It felt like the band was playing for like a small group of their audience members, but also kind of reflecting how much this band is growing. It flowed really nicely. Just an excellent first set. Really, really dug it.
Love it. And then set 2, we get the longest Madhavan gap since early 2019. First time it's gone above a 10-show gap since then, which is crazy. Wow. We were the Madhavan we were all waiting for all tour, and boy did they deliver on this Madhavan. Whoo boy. Just the Bliss Jam to end all Bliss Jams. Like, what an incredible thing. Shades of 726. Neal, you mentioned earlier how they'll pull out like a familiar theme from an older jam that we'll recognize. This is like the Cleveland Rockdale from last year, similar kind of thing. But man, really, really amazing jam. And then they return to the Madhavan theme, and one of these, again, multiple peaks, peaked it again and again and again and again before finally returning home. So this is up there for the year so far for sure. Silver Rising with kind of a reworked drum focused intro, which was interesting. We were kind of thrown off for a second as to what song it might be. But always a great song. Love this again as a landing pad after a jam in the second set. Silver Rising kind of works anywhere in the show, quite honestly. Get Redbird again. Little loose ends action. Very different from the Boston one, as has been said. But more of a rockin' vibe to it, a little more funk to it than the kind of straightforward darkness that we got in Boston. And then we get runs through This Old Sea and Don't Do It. Felt like they were at this point they shoehorned a couple of songs in before curfew. Peter kind of gave Don't Do It the Jive 2 treatment. Threw in a little clav and organ solo where he normally does piano. So that was cool. And a quick tea encore to send it off. Close out the Ryman run. But all in all, great set once again. And what a Madhavan.
Yeah, this Madhavan is really good. I mean, you've already hit on, I think, the points that I wanted to hit on. This Madhavan does touch on a very, very familiar theme. If you listen to a lot of the top jams of last year, then you've definitely listened to that Cleveland Rockdale, and like that theme is omnipresent here, and it's amazing. I think you said to me like you think they did a better job of it, and I agree. Like it feels more cohesive. No, maybe it was Jeff who said it, but in any case, it doesn't matter. it like feels
I think
more
it was Jeff.
cohesive like within this jam, but also at the same time like strange that they kind of picked up a jam they've already done and then played it again, which is interesting that they went back to that. And I'm actually kind of glad they did because it's such a beautiful jam. This Madhavan, really, really, really good in, what is like a really, really good set. The Silver Rising that came after, again, reworked song a little bit, where you get a little bit more drums to start it. And like, I thought it just sounded perfect. Like sometimes, like it doesn't have to be about the jam. Sometimes it has to be just your feeling in the moment when you're listening to this music. And I think this Silver Rising did that. And then the Redbird that follows is one of my favorite Redbirds I think ever. It's really really good. It's unique. It has like a riff that they grab a hold of and they ride it out again. Not like the Philly Echo, where they kind of ride it out into like big peaks or anything like that. But they really let this develop, and it sounds like a song. Like it doesn't sound like a jam. This
Mm-hmm.
sounds like something that might show up again. So when you think back to like Vegas, Earthling or Alien, when they play a very distinct segment of Thatch in it, we were all like, wow, this jam's really cool. Like, what could this possibly be? And then all of a sudden it shows up later as an actual song. I wonder if like a segment of what this Redbird is, which has this very kind of, to some degree or another, it sounds like a jam band playing a classic rock song to me. It's like funky to some degree, but it sounds like very, almost like the band. And so I wonder
Mm-hmm.
what this riff is, because it feels way too fleshed out to just be like a simple piece of improv. This is something they've played before to me when I hear it. So love this Redbird. I think it's great. And then this old C, like what a shame. They finally play it, and then this is all that we get for this old C. But I guess that's okay, right? Because the song on its own.
I have a feeling it might be there might be a redemption for it coming up on the
Yeah, I
upcoming
mean, I sure
leg.
hope so, because you have
The
expectations
big
when you
one.
hear this old C. When they started playing this, I was thinking, oh boy, like here we go. This is going to be something spectacular. Didn't turn out to be that way. And I guess that's fine because, again, the song on its own is great. And then you get Don't Do It to close it off, which is always great.
It's fun.
This Madhavan is my jam of the year so far, and I think your comparison to the Cleveland version is really apt, and is part of the reason I love it. Is it kind of scrapes like the bottom of the emotional barrel. Like Rick is playing almost like the All I Need from Cleveland this year. It feels like Leeds where he is kind of crafting a song in the moment, and he's playing something very familiar at the same time, and it doesn't do anything that like musically shocks you, but it doesn't need to. It almost is like the Arcadia from Mission 2021, where there's just a real emotional energy to it that when you're listening to it, it's something that, as much as I love Fish, they don't typically do this outside of songs like Slave to the Traffic Light and Harry Hood. And it's something that Goose does incredibly well, where they can play a piece of improvisation and make it feel like it's a peak of a really emotional song. Almost as though they're like inserting like a Silver Rising or an Everything Must Go solo into a Madhavan. But then you get this like really raging conclusion to it. It's just currently my favorite stuff I've heard from the band this year. But Redbird, I was right there with you. To have that come 2 songs later and have it jam with as much freedom and as much energy as it did at that point in time was really special, and just made up for the fact that, yeah, I was really stoked to get This Old Sea again. I'm a huge proponent of the ballads jamming, and that being a big thing that is why I love Goose. I was shocked when they left This Old Sea, but I was also kind of like, okay, time management has been an issue on this in this Ryman run. We're going to go into Don't Do It. Great set closer. I'm always here for Goose playing the band, and then a killer hot tea to close things out. So this show I have as my number 5 show of the year overall. I just thought from note 1 when they walked on stage dressed as each other and we were all laughing, all the way through the hot tea. It was just a great night of Goose. You guys have thrown around the like this was a 2018 show played in 2023 or 2019 show. I don't know where this would sit in terms of like where Goose's approach has been over the last couple of years, but I just know that like from a hit play on Jive Lee, you're not really going to want to skip any songs and everything's going to flow in an album like fashion. That's something that if I could offer any criticism, I would say like that sort of approach Goose could really embrace going forward. I find that they are very, very strong in segments, and sometimes that doesn't lead to like a full show constructed like an album in the way that like I love a full show. Like Fish will play like a second set that has a narrative arc to it. Sometimes I don't hear that as much in Goose, and I heard it in this show, and I just want to keep going
Yeah,
back
for
to it.
sure. This is like one of my favorite shows of the year. And I think for that reason, because it all kind of like flows together nicely. This is a show that you can listen to like end to end and really enjoy, like a Philly night two, or like, first night of Goose at, Mission Ballroom. Like, I feel like, that's a good example of a
Yeah.
show that like you really could listen to end to end and is wonderful. Just so happens those are both live
Mhm.
releases of the band too.
Right.
Go figure.
Yeah. Good
All right.
shows.
So
Good shows.
Final
show
of
of
the
the
tour.
tour. And
Leg.
yeah,
Whatever.
it's funny because this in some ways is like a tour closer, like a false tour closer, but certainly didn't have that energy. It had like a different kind of energy to it. This was yet another kind of party show.
It had an energy. Yeah, it had an energy of almost as if they were playing an outdoor brewery in
Yeah,
Alabama.
I think that's right. So let's dive in and kind of talk about the set. So set one, you get Yeti opener, which already you're partying. You get Echo of a Rose, which I think is like the one piece of jamming in the show that really is worth checking out and listening to if you're looking for jams. Then you get California Magic, then Earthling or Alien, and then a half step, which is always exciting to get in a show, and then a So Ready set one opener or set one closer. Um, that's a pretty good set strung together. I think you're left wanting for jams when you listen to this set, and you're the kind of person like I am. But really cool set, beginning to end, and also early show, which I think is worth mentioning. This is outdoor show at the first outdoor show of the run, and early on in the evening to start.
First headlining outdoor show since August in Portland. They did a festival or two after that. Stubbs and ACL in October, but those were obviously all those gigs were tied to the Austin City Limits Festival. So this is their first headlining outdoor show since August. Nice to have outdoor Goose back. I like seeing concerts outside. I don't get to see them outside personally until Peach, but nice that they're playing outside for those who get to see that.
You ever have like a Saturday where you have some like light beer to a pale ale? Nothing great, nothing crazy, but just like, a couple good beers that you can just drink on. You're hanging out with your friends. At some point, someone orders like, an appetizer sampler and you get some wings, you got some mozzarella sticks and some jalapeno poppers. Maybe there's a game on and it's just like a great time and there's like no consequence to it at all. And you're maybe not going to remember like the nuances of this day, but like you had a really good time. You connected with some friends, you shared some laughs. That is what this show was for me.
You're really good at analogies.
Mm.
That's like a very impressive and very detailed analogy.
But like, you know what
Well
I'm talking
done.
about? Like this show, like I got nothing crazy to rave about, but I got nothing to
Yeah.
hate on it. Really good song selection. Every time that camera went behind the band and showed the crowd and you saw like the line of porta potties and you saw like all these old industrial buildings around there and like you saw the beer tents, like, it's April 2nd. It was still a little bit chilly that weekend in Denver. It's now like 85 degrees outside. It's crazy. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I was
But like
out in
it
shorts
felt
today.
it felt like I was watching the dawn of spring 2023 and knowing that we've got Fish coming up, we got another leg of Goose, we got festivals on the horizon, like it just had this very just breezy, fun hang show that nobody will go back and listen to. That one friend that you have will rave about one jam of this, and you'll think that they're crazy for the remainder of the year, because you're kind of like, it was just like, it was a fun show. It was a party show. I
Yeah.
dug it. I liked this first set. I loved where they were taking Echo. I loved where Half Step went. I think that's one of their best covers as well. And you talk about like making a
for
cover
sure.
their own. They've made Half Step their own song. So I was into it. It didn't have a ton of consequential, re-listenable, like, pullback for me, but it was just a really fun little show there.
Right. And, it's funny. I've been holding on to this the whole entire episode. And I was going to say, Brian, if you were going to compare anything on this show or this run to a cheese, what cheese would it be? And here we are. It's
You love it.
it's
You
mozzarella
love the
sticks.
cheese.
It is this show. It's mozzarella.
It's mozzarella sticks, man.
Right.
That's it.
Nice.
This is something that you bring up on HFPod a lot.
No,
isn't it,
it's been
Neal?
done on HFPod. I listen to HFPod regularly, and I brought it up last time. That last episode of HFPod, which everybody should listen to because it's absolutely killer episode. I mean, just got
Yes, the 40 for 40 1994 episode. It is a highly entertaining.
It's the Cornell 77 of podcasts. But in any case, yeah. So why don't we just dive into set 2 while we're at it? So set 2, we get Fish in the Sea set opener, which is, I mean, again, amazing cover. One
Fish
they've
in the
made their
Sea.
own and so good. And then Same Old Shenanigans, A Western Sun, which is just a beautiful Goose song and doesn't have to be the big jammer. Can just kind of fit into a set everywhere. And then you get Animal, you get a 726 and Dripfield to close out the set. And then you get that Rum Encore, which I know some people absolutely love. I wish we had Jeff Goose on here right now to talk about Rum Encores.
I wish we had him on to talk about
in
this
general.
show.
Yeah, this is the kind of show that people like Jive generally hate. But again, this show is of no consequence, right? It's just it's a good
he's
time.
old, we know
and
that.
They went out there and played it. Interestingly enough, 726 finds its way into the show, which I guess is on the album, so it makes sense that it's here. But like, this is an incredible rarity and cool to show up in this set as kind of a cool down towards the end after Animal. But I mean, so many amazingly fun songs in this set. Fish in the Sea always kills. Same Old Shenanigans always kills. Western Sun Cool Down, sure. Like, I'll take that anytime. And then Animal, and then you get like a 726 cool down, and then a Dripfield to close out the set. As far as this set reads, this is an amazing set. This is an incredible set of music. Just doesn't have the jams. And like, again, that's okay. It's okay to have fun at a show.
Yeah, having fun at a show is great. Shout out to the Fish in the Sea teases and Animal. Big fan of that. Obviously because I'm a huge nerd. The covers they played on this tour, amazing selection of covers, choosing when to play them, which ones from, obviously they have so many covers, but they played so many of their best ones. So hopefully that means they will get more plays on the upcoming leg. And that doesn't mean that, we're now going to get all the less desirable covers coming up. But we'll see what happens. But you guys got anything else on this show, or can we move into our kind of post leg other topics?
No. Very, very similar thoughts to you guys on set 2. Just the pale ale show.
The pale ale show. Not quite an IPA, just a pale
not quite. Didn't have the bite, but pale ales, they got their time and place, man.
Mozzarella sticks.
Solid mozzarella sticks. There we go. All right. So a quick before we get to our mail sack segment, I'd like to give a quick Fantasy Goose shout out to Chris Newcomb, who is currently winning the tour so far, which is started at the beginning of March and will stretch until the days between shows at the beginning of May. Our good friend Jive Goose bringing up second place here with 260 points, trails Newcomb by 9. I'm a little bit further down there at 238. Neal trails me 227. D's at 216, and Kev is at 122. Kev's playing for fun. We know Kev is a guy who likes to play Fantasy Goose for fun. Shout out to Kev. So, I believe it is time for the mail sack. So let's open up the sack. Let's dive into the sack. We're gonna grab a few sacks here.
Sure.
Neal, would you like to go first?
So, touching on a theme that we've kind of talked about a little bit, at 902 Vickers says, "Why is this the year of Trevor?" And the answer is, I have no idea, but it's great. It is the year of Trevor. I think we're hearing him more. He is out front more. Again, I do think I have an idea. I think it is confidence in his own playing. I think it's the band's confidence in his playing. They're allowing him to take that spotlight a little bit more. You're seeing bass solos in places where there weren't bass solos before, and that's great. It only makes the band better. And then, well, we can do this one too. Captain Incredible says, "Why is Goose so damn good at playing All I Need in Ohio and Montana?" That's a damn good question. They are really fucking good at playing that song.
Let's hope that they prove that again next week.
We get Montana coming soon. So I'm excited for you, Ryan, because you're going to be at those shows. I'm excited for you because you're going to be in Montana, really. If you've never been, please go. It's an amazing place.
I'm excited.
It's the last best place.
An incredible place to go. And I'm also jealous of the fact that you're going to do the drive to Idaho after, which is probably going to be the best part of that whole run. Like, Goose is going to be great. I assure you that Goose.
So you're saying the 8-hour drive from Bozeman to Boise is going to be better
Brian, back
than
me
the
up on
8
this.
Goose shows I'm seeing?
I mean, I went to college in Montana. I got married in Montana. I'm an incredibly biased person here, but yes, the drive across Montana is going to be one of the greatest experiences of your entire life. You've never seen clouds the way that you're going to see them in Montana. You've never seen the sun shine the way it shines in Montana. The way that it goes from prairie that just feels endless. Like, you literally cannot believe that you live on an earth that big when you see the sky and you see the prairies around you. And then you go through these mountain passes, and every time you get out of the car, it just is like the freshest smell you've ever had in your entire life. You could dip your hand in the river and pull out a rainbow trout. Fucking amazing. It's the greatest place on earth.
This episode of Always Almost There is sponsored by the Montana Office of Tourism. I just Googled what the official title of the tourism thing was, so I would be accurate. But thank you, Montana, for the sponsorship. Brian just made a lot of money by putting it in. So. All right, I'm going to open up the sack here. We got one from @HeadySteve. This is an interesting handle. Every time I see someone with a Disco Biscuits profile picture commenting positive things about Goose, I get a little bit thrown off. That's not a knock on Biscuits fans. It's just there happen to be a lot of Biscuits fans who don't like Goose. So shout out to HeadySteve. Favorite 3 songs / jams. Really liked the Cap Electric Avenue. Hopefully more shows open with a jam. I agree. I think that'd be really cool to see, especially if Neal is on setlist duty, and it kind of throws him into a panic of what song they're playing. Philly Echo and Cleveland All I Need, a couple of his other highlights. He also says, in Wisteria from the Ryman, is that a Louisiana Bayou tease starting around the 10-minute mark? That is the second Dave Matthews comparison we've heard come out about this Wisteria. We have also heard You Might Die Trying from a couple of people. I personally, if it's between the two of those, I hear Louisiana Bayou a little bit more, the jam from that song. But that's just me. Interesting to, draw more parallels there. Dave Matthews' influence on Goose. Very, very, very interesting. Gonna grab one more here from Juzzle the Wise. Hashtag let Jeb Sachs is a hope and a wish. Probably more like wishful thinking. Yes, I agree with both. I would like to see Jeb bust out the sax, but I don't know how likely that is. Brian, do you want to grab some sax?
I'm gonna grab a sack. I'm going in fully knowing that this may be a horrible opinion, but I'm gonna make it anyway. Matt here at @the trailer. What happened to Lead the Way? Matt, I'm right there with you, my dude. The 126 2022 version of Lead the Way, absolutely brilliant. One of my favorite early jams of 2022. I get into endless debates with my podcasting co-host, one of my best friends, Mr. David Goldstein. We got into Goose together. We both went in as Goose skeptics. We have become diehards over the last 4 years. But, as with all good friendships, you walk down a path together and you divert from time to time. And one of the songs we divert on is Lead the Way. I am here for Lead the Way. I think that it has an incredible hook, and I think it leads to excellent, excellent jamming spaces. We have not heard a version since 10/14/2022 in Oklahoma City. I'd love to hear that come back, just like Twice a Tour. That's all we need.
Or, every few shows.
Or, every
the
few
20-minute
shows.
version
Yeah.
Looms. Someday. I've been saying this for a while now. I've been saying it for like a year and a half now. But someday we'll get it.
At least. It'll pop up. It'll pop up someday.
It'd be a good thing.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our spring tour leg 1 recap. We covered it in less time than it took us to cover the 5 shows from the cap.
We did.
So look at us being efficient. Brian, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure to go in depth on this leg of tour with you. We look forward to having you on the pod again soon, of course, as our resident cavalry, waiting in the wings at any time to come on when we need a guest. Speaking of guests, of course, we are always looking for guests for our day after show live streams, which happen the day after every single Goose show at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. We are still, if you are listening to this, we are still looking for guests for night 2 of Bozeman. So that is recapping the April 19th show. Come celebrate 420 with us by coming and talking about the show at 3:30 p.m. Eastern.
Ooh, tough timing if you're a 420 celebrator on the East Coast.
Going to that show.
Tough timing.
Well, we should be done before that, theoretically. But if you're going to that show and you want to come on and talk about us, shoot us a DM on social media at AAT GoosePod. We'd love to have you on. But, of course, tune in for the rest of the tour. I'm very excited for a leg of 13 Goose shows in a row. I think this is our last big run of all headlining Goose shows until September. So
yeah, what could go wrong?
I'm excited.
13 straight shows on the West Coast, huh? What could go
wrong?
Yeah, listen, we heard from Peter when he was on the pod in February that they felt that the West Coast tour last year, they're playing smaller rooms again. It's more out of the way, so more of a chance for them to loosen up. I feel like, but they're playing a couple of rooms. I think the Boise and the Eugene venues are under 1,000 capacity. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing them, in small venues. Of course, Bozeman is also 1,000, and seeing them at the Warfield in San Francisco, which is going to be really cool. It'll be my first time there, doing that whole leg with my mom, who, fun fact, the last time she was at the Warfield was for Garcia and Grisman in the early 90s. And I have instructed her to tell everybody about that for cred. Which I think will work. But yeah, this has been a fun episode. I had a good time.
Thank you guys for having me on. This was so much fun. I loved this leg and loved talking about it with you guys. Always down to come back.
Fantastic. All right, well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Always Almost There. Have a fantastic day, and we will see you next time.